Trackcast. If you didn't already do it, you should have registered. Today was the final day to register to vote in the upcoming November 8th election. This episode, we're going to tell you who you should vote for because we're more important. Not really. We're just going to talk about that. I'll talk about it. We'll see who else talks about it with me. But we're Almost Agreement at gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Go to the website, almostagreement.com. You can check out my voter guide 22. It has some interviews for some of the candidates coming up this November 8th election, as well as a special interview I did with Becky Massey on the 4 ballot items. And I think that's, I've talked about it a bunch, but I think it's important that you do your homework before you go in because you do not want to read, especially the Becky Massey question number 2. You don't want to read that in the polling station because it's going to take you forever. So go in knowing which one you're going to say yes or no. We'll follow up with some conversation about that in the next couple of weeks as well. I'm going to talk to Scott and Jesse about it on their show. Check out Compass Points podcast on all your major podcast providers as well. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all your favorite podcast providers. Like, share, tell your friends about us. Spread the word. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. And Sam and I are going to chat, and maybe Max will call in. He's so old. Anyway. I had my day.
Good evening.
Yeah, Max has been, he was on vacation last week, but he has been back full bore, 12-hour days at the new store doing the remodel and working on it. And so
hard work.
I ain't going to get mad if you don't call in tonight, and I'm such a freaking dork. I spent an hour and a half on a phone call with the company that's doing our computer systems. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, this button, and then you hit this thing, and then you do this, and this is how you can adjust that. And it was all dork stuff for the computer system. Yeah. And I enjoyed every minute of it. So.
Nice.
What's new with you, man? What's going on?
Nothing new.
Nothing new?
Nothing new.
What's old with you? I don't know. What the fuck?
I'm getting old. I feel old.
I mean, you're the baby of the group, so you can suck it.
It's true.
I mean, well, Max's wife turned 40. That's what they were on vacation for. They were traveling for her 40th birthday.
Nice.
Then AC's wife's 3 or 4 years younger. She's a couple years younger than us, actually.
Is she?
But she's not one of us. So, neither one of them are one of us.
It's true.
They're one of them. But yeah. Oh, okay. So that's everything's. There was some interesting stuff in the local section. Mr. Paul Noel restructured some stuff in the KPD.
That story.
Yeah, kind of interesting. Some of it makes total sense. Every single captain in KPD got reassigned.
Did we talk about this last week or week before? I thought there was some kind of restructuring that
he'd talked that he was planning on doing one. He just hadn't announced the official thing, and it officially came out I think last Tuesday or Wednesday. Before there was any real coverage about it. The Sunday paper, the News Sentinel Sunday had a section with a flow chart, this is how it works. And really the only major shift is it used to be there was an East and West Knoxville patrol. And so there was a captain that's the first level underneath Chief Noel. So there was a captain and it was literally the 275 split. No. So it was 275 and Henley Street. If it was on the east side, it was one patrol. If it was on the west side, it was another patrol. Yeah. And so apparently what he did is he kept that except for what we consider downtown, Old City. I'm not sure how much up in the Old North Knox it goes. And Campus and South Knox are now its own division. And then everything else is still the east-west as it was.
That makes a little sense.
Well, because
you have more density of
compared to years of old where there was nothing going on in those downtown areas, you didn't need you didn't need a kind of dedicated. And so, but apparently Noel's philosophy is each of these captains, their job is not just to set who's driving their car in what little subset of their patrol, but it's to go out and be regularly meeting with neighborhood groups or churches that are the neighborhood church and be he wants a much more community activated captain squad. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes in the whole set of things. But
if the public at large is receptive of it, I think it's a good thing.
Right, but the captain's thing what was it? Yeah. But everybody got reassigned and basically as a way to kind of wipe the history of it's well, I've been a captain, Chief, what was it, Eve put me here. And it's like, well, like, all the politics and the favors and the history that's between the old chief and the old captains or lieutenants or both or whatever. It's like, here he's like, you're on my watch now. This is your new spot. I put you there, whether you like it or not. This is where we're starting. And so I think that's a valid way to do it. And like I said, or like you said, I agree. I think having a intent on community outreach is a start. I don't know if it's a fix, but it's at least a start.
You're not just going to see my face whenever shit's going wrong,
right? And the city, and the city has its own little like police whatever task force that's part of like city council and the mayor's office that's separate from, and it's kind of like a semi oversight. But that's just because the structure is different, because KPD answers to the mayor. Like Chief Noel, if he was an LSU fan last week and Mayor Kincannon was like, you're not allowed to be an LSU fan and work here. And then he'd say, well, tough cookies, Gilwix Tigers. She could fire him, and there's like, legally speaking, there's no whatever.
Be debatable.
I don't think so. I don't think she could say...
You could fire someone for being a fan of an opposing team.
I mean, as the standard rule in the state of Tennessee goes, you don't tell them why you fired them. You just fire them. Everybody knows why, but you don't say it out loud on the record.
Sure.
We can't have a guy like that in this community.
I think you would have to fire them for cause.
Right, and Jesse made a good point. Maybe it was Scott or Jesse made a good point on their show this week. But there's been a lot of talk, and there's I guess News Sentinel is suing the city right now for some FOIA stuff because they're not. News Sentinel's arguing that they should have there should have been more transparency in the search process or whatever. But the city hired a search firm. The search firm's not under the same like FOIA rules and shit like that as the city itself. So if like Mayor Kincannon and some city officials were out doing the job search,
right, then
all the applications would be public record. And so we talked about it a couple of weeks ago about how, I kind of see it both ways. I could see it as a disadvantage for the job search sake to be public record because some people might not want to apply that might be good for the job because they don't want to ruffle feathers in their home precinct and then not get the job, and then they have to deal with you're trying to leave?
Right.
And so I could see that kind of both ways. But where did I start that? I just blanked out on where I was going with that. Anyway, yeah, that the News Sentinel's trying to sue over that because they feel like everybody that applied should be public record, which I kind of get too.
Yeah, it was taxpayer-funded money,
right,
to do this search.
But so Chief Noel's, apparently he was not one that would have cared if his search was public record because he was out. He interviewed with Chattanooga, and Chattanooga was a public record system or whatever. And then like the more conspiratorial part of me is like, why the hell is why is he trying to get out of New Orleans so bad? And it's like, well, he's a white officer. He's not getting. New Orleans hasn't had a white police chief in like 40 years. So it's very it's very likely that he had hit his ceiling in the New Orleans Police Department. He couldn't get any higher than whatever his previous role was. He was never going to be chief of New Orleans Police Department, maybe because of the whiteness, maybe because of other political factors at play. But at the end of the day, that seems to be the general consensus on why it's not like those investigations and stuff that we talked about a couple weeks ago. But I mean, it may be part of it too, but at least a contributing factor was it was unlikely he was getting any higher in New Orleans as far as position goes. So
it's possible.
At some point, you can't really blame him. I mean, I want to be a chief. I'm not going to be a chief of this department. Let's go see a smaller city.
Chief of a medium-sized city.
A smaller city with more white people. I got a chance. Those are my words, not Chief Noel's. These are the jokes, people. This is what we do. There was this divisive concept thing. Have you heard about that at all?
Divisive concept?
Yes, divisive, I think, is the technical term. Divisive concepts law went into place last year.
No.
I kind of think that, I mean, it's one of those things that...
With teaching?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently it's very much targeted at the secondary education, state colleges and stuff like that. Like, it's not targeted at, like, the way it's written or whatever, it's not specifically targeted, I don't think. But it's like, generally speaking, the concern over it is not about, like, high school, middle schools, divisive concepts, whatever. It's more about, wokeness in colleges, that whole, like, liberal agenda in colleges, whatever that floats around. and it's our Republican legislatures push back against these liberal colleges turning out more Democratic voters, and we fucking can't have that. And so that's what the pushback is. And so apparently UT, a bunch of professors at UT, like did a protest where they went and they did a class where they specifically broke the law to see what, like, just to force the issue. It's like, all right, well, you're going to arrest like half the faculty. That happened last week.
Really? Huh.
Good local coverage as usual. But it didn't at the same time. It was one of those, like, that's apparently the problem with it is it's so weirdly written. And this is I guess a better way to put it, the way that it's written, the very true specific part in the way that it's written, that's the problem, is that it's not a crime, right? Like it's not a criminal offense, but it is civilly. You can be held civilly liable as the teacher. So
if someone wanted to sue you or sue the teacher,
right? And so you could say, student X says in this class, they're not just teaching me about the history of Islam or anything like that. They're saying that I have to believe in Islam to be, like, that's the premise, a very broken version, but that's the premise of this anti-divisive or divisive concepts thing, is that they're not just teaching it, they're not just teaching the ideas of it, they're teaching you to be it. And so it's like, again, I use Islam as just an example off the top of my head. It's like, it's not just, teaching the history of Islam and how it's affected world culture and stuff like that. It's saying that, to pass this class, you have to convert to Islam. And the student can, like, it's not against the law, but the student can sue the teacher and the school,
right,
for saying, well, they're trying to make me believe in something as part of the class, which I kind of like. I mean, that gross example is obviously wrong. Like, I mean, I would think I would assume that most people would agree that that's obviously wrong. If they had a Christian study class that wasn't just like the history of the Bible and where the Bible sits in world history and all that kind of different stuff, or even just like, you get into Western Civ classes where, like, how much, the Holy Roman Empire and how much the Pope had control over all these different, kings and stuff like that. Like, there's kings that answer to the Pope, and like, it's correct impact in history, like, it's part of history. Right. But if that class turned into, well, now this is why Jesus is your savior and you must confess your sins or whatever, we would all agree that that's not, that it would be inappropriate for you to fail a class because you say you don't believe in Jesus at the end of class.
Right.
And so on the gross premise of the idea, I generally agree. I agree that it should be, it's a problem. I don't know if making it civilly liable or a crime or something like that is the correct way to fix it. But if there are classes that are teaching concepts and you have to, that are on some level a faith-based thing, that's not an exact science conversation, and that you have to believe in the thing to pass the class, I think that's wrong, regardless of whatever it is. Whether you believe in, I don't know, fucking, the tenets of the Democratic Party, you have to be a Democrat to pass the class. I would think that should be a problem, and we should all see that as a problem.
Right.
I would see it the same way as if you had a right-leaning class that you had to be a registered Republican to pass. Like, well, that's not fair. That's not correct. But then there's the question of how much of anything like this is actually happening versus this is a big show by the legislature. Probably more likely.
They're doing something to fight this.
Right. Look at us. We're standing up to this liberal agenda in these liberal schools, teaching all these kids to be liberal, socialist psychopaths. And Jesse made a good point on their podcast. He's like, the idea of the state, any version of the state you want to use, but the specific we have here locally, that the state has a list of ideas that are illegal, which isn't technically true by the way the law is written. But in a very gross version of a very gross version of the bill that passed, essentially the state of Tennessee has a list of ideas that it's not okay to talk about in state schools.
I thought there was part of that law or part of another law that did have to do with regular K through 12 education.
There might be some. I mean, it might be universal. I just think that the university professors, especially in some of the liberal arts classes, are more concerned about it because it's more likely that they might tread that line. Which, again, is weird to me because one of the arguments against splitting up the College of Arts and Sciences is that they don't want the foreign language department's concerned that if the hard sciences and biologies and stuff like that split to a different college, then the new college won't require foreign language, therefore they won't have classes. And it's like, well, so you are trying to set this up in a way to force kids to take certain classes so you can keep the department as big as it is. You can keep your teachers, you can keep the number of classrooms, you can keep the budget you have, because the college is forcing kids through the classes that you have. But then you're also concerned about things that you're teaching to kids being problematic for your career at the same time. It's like, well, why don't you let kids take the class that want to take the class and not force kids to take all these classes that they don't want to take, and then you don't have to worry about a divisive concept, I would think, or you have less issues to worry about if the divisive concept.
I don't see how combining or splitting into separate colleges would necessarily change the curriculum required for a degree.
It doesn't necessarily change it, but it changes who's making those requirements. Because like the Haslam School of Business is a standalone school, and they took foreign language as a requirement out of all of the business majors. They're not saying you can't take foreign language classes, but when I was a student, and it wasn't the Haslam School of Business yet, right. But when I was a student in the UT Business School, we had a foreign language requirement.
Right.
And I went ape shit on it because I suck at it. My brain just doesn't do it. So I did in spring semester, I did a half of spring Spanish 101, second half of spring Spanish 102, mini term Spanish 201, first half of summer session Spanish 202, knocked it out. Yeah. I did the whole thing in like 5 months. I was like, just boom, 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 Spanish, and
give yourself no time to forget it.
Right, and I've had more than enough time to forget all of it now, right. Other than the good generic basics of it. It's I guess to me one of the things about this whole thing is like, this one you're not going to like it or whatever. Like why does the state of Tennessee through our tax collection subsidize colleges as much as they do? Why do we put the state of Tennessee, this legislature that, a lot of people, this Republican majority legislature with at least people in the university and schools in general are not particularly happy with this super Republican legislature. We'll put it that way. Why would we put the control or the at least the wallet control over universities on the state? And then if it's true, or since it is true, like how much does it actually cost to teach a class? Like we talk about how high tuition is, and we've been talking about student loan forgiveness and all this stuff the last couple of weeks. Like legitimately, how much money is the University of Tennessee getting from the state and grants and tuition? And they're still concerned about funding.
Right.
Or that the amount that the state is kicking in is enough that if the state said, fuck you, well, it's a little different with UT, obviously, because UT is a state school. It's a land-grant school. It only exists because the state gave them the land and all this different stuff. It's a little bit different there. But if the University of Tennessee Knoxville wanted to drop its state school status, is that an option? If they're like, you know what?
Sure, there's a process.
You know what? We make enough in tuition. We have enough grant money coming in. Our sports programs fund themselves with extras that come back into the educational side of it. We're going to take our state designation out, and you guys can shut the fuck up and not tell us what to do anymore. We're going to be a private school now. We're not going to be a public university. Like, I just don't, like, it confuses me, like, this built-in interdependence on each other and disdain for each other at the same time. Like, we built these systems to have each other to function, and then the whole time we hate what the other's doing. At least in the state of Tennessee with the Republican majority legislature we've had in the last few years.
I don't know if I can necessarily say the university hates the legislature.
I'm not at large. A lot of the faculty does. I mean, at least the faculty that did this protest, they have a grievance with the state legislature, a significant grievance, enough to take a strong action
with a legislation that was passed.
Okay. Nonetheless, why does the university, like, how much is the university getting from the state that they feel the need to put themselves in the position to have to deal with the legislature of certain things that the legislature does from time to time? Does that make more sense? Why wouldn't you put
still a weird question. I have no idea how much the state gives the university.
I just don't, like, to me, I just don't think, like, I think if I'm Randy Boyd, I'm like, listen, guys, your salaries depend on what the state gives us. We can drop the state, and cut half our staff, or we can keep the state and deal with some of the bullshit the state drops on us, which is probably what Randy Boyd's realistically doing, but he's letting the teachers kind of feel like they have a voice in it. I just think it's a weird relationship, and I don't see the point.
I don't really get it.
I think it's
I mean, I think many groups of people in different facets of the state structure probably don't agree with certain legislation that get passed, and it's a pretty common human trait that we're going to push back on things that we don't fully agree with.
I agree, but I think if depending on what you are and what you're doing in these many different places, if it is something that is a significant grievance to you, you take steps to get out of the control of. I would think I would do my best. Like if I was, I would be like, no, I don't want this. I don't want them to be able to hold the purse over my head.
Right, but I think it was a much smaller and easier step for just them to, put on this protest class essentially, rather than, I guess, lobby the school to drop the state status. Which
I agree.
Is highly, highly unlikely.
I wholly agree.
Maybe they just wanted to bring attention to it.
I agree with that. I agree that was the intent of it. I don't understand. Like, I guess the main part is I don't know
why they're poking the bear. Is that what you want to know?
Maybe. I mean, there is a definite ability of Mr. Lee and some of the other legislators to hold a grudge, and that's a possibility. But I don't know. I guess the point is why. Like, I guess it goes to a broader thing that I talk about all the time. Why does the state control these things anyway? Of all the things that we have to have state input on, why does higher education need to be one of them? I guess is part of my question.
Like I said, part of it's just the fact that the UT system itself is a state school.
And because it has been, it has to stay.
Not that it has to stay. Like I said, I'm sure there's a way that they can split off from the state and be a private university if they chose to.
Right, but yes, I agree with that. I'm just saying, but since that's how we've done it, we just deal with it. I just think I think it's odd to have existed in the first place that way, but I don't know. I think there's a lot of weird interplay that I don't think makes sense to me. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
I mean, your answer is
it's sorry you're confused as to why states have state universities.
I mean, that with as expensive as college is, why the state needs to subsidize it and it's still that expensive. Yeah. That's all.
I don't know.
Trying to think of what else.
We should just make it a private school and charge even more. Less people would go.
I mean, maybe. Does it? I'd be. It's a good question. Let's see what Mr. Google says. Does the state of TE?
I think Google likes to search sentences.
The Tennessee General Assembly yesterday, and this was from April 22nd, 2022. $217 million for the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. So $217 million for the University. Oh, hey.
Oh, how much is the University of Tennessee worth? How much does it cost to operate the University of Tennessee?
$1.76 billion. What did we say? How many million did we just say?
That's how much it's worth, or whatever.
That's how much. That's its annual budget is $1.76 billion.
Okay.
So $217 million. So a little over 10%, 15% of their total budget comes from the state. That's impressive. That's a big number. Doesn't surprise me.
That's probably throughout the whole university system. So 3-4 campuses in the state.
That's true. No, that's $1.76 billion budget for the University of Tennessee in Knoxville.
Okay, yeah.
And that's with no tuition increase from last year. I do remember talking about that with the Compass guys a little while back. Yeah. So that is the biggest.
Right, but the university itself is pretty broad. I mean, you've got everything from the Body Farm to the Ag Campus to
Right, and the university at large, you got Memphis, Nashville,
Right.
Martin.
That's what I was saying. But
Chat.
this $1.76 billion is just UTK.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would include, or if they're just listing that of us being the home base for University of Tennessee, just listed as that.
I mean, this is from the Daily Beacon.
Yeah.
And so I think it's... How much is the University of Tennessee worth? It gets in 2020, it had a $1.3 billion endowment. That's weird math. So let's say the 2020 total budget was similar. State kicks in $200 million, $1.34 billion in endowments. So because it's the $1.5 billion, but only use a couple $100 million in tuition income.
Or endowments of like essentially chunks of money that people leave to the school.
Yeah.
Essentially donations.
Yeah, whether it's either like I set up an annual donation as an alumni or whatever trust fund. Like some people do trust funds upon their death, where it's like a certain amount each year goes out to the,
Right.
And it collects interest in time and all sorts of fun little games. But yeah, so if I'm confused, I'm further confused because if the endowment's that big, that only leaves $400 million in needed income to cover the budget.
I think we realized a long time ago when we talked about just individual local elementary, middle, high schools, trying to figure out how much it costs to operate.
It's impossible.
Just that small thing.
Right, and then it doesn't say whether that endowment is everything else on the little chart is UT Knoxville, but it was Blount College, then East Tennessee College, then East Tennessee University before it became UT Knoxville in 1880. Undefeated, Alabama coming to town.
That's right. Apparently there was some kerfuffle with Twitter or something. Everybody thought that College Game Day was backing out. Saw some story about that.
Oh, really? I didn't hear about that. I
And
knew they were
apparently
coming.
they deleted a tweet, and everyone apparently jumped on the bandwagon thinking that Game Day really wasn't coming.
I mean, somebody said that to me today when I was out working. Like, can you believe they're coming twice? I'm like, where else would they go this week? Like, there is no game on the calendar as big as this game this weekend.
I was seeing Ohio State doesn't play Michigan this year. I think they just played Michigan State. But
Well, that's weird.
Yeah, I thought they played them every year, but maybe it's a weird off year.
No, I'm pretty sure it's the.
I thought, it's always been like the biggest of their kind of Big Ten rivalries.
Yeah, because it's the. There's history. There's like literal state history to it because the border on the corner of Lake Erie. There was like
right, the Battle of Toledo.
Yeah, they had there was like a militia battle, like the state militias clashed.
Yeah, Battle of Toledo.
History of folk. Hockey might be back. I'm still so confused. You got me so messed up in the head on.
I think I did see an article that said the regular season was officially starting today. But I guess our overseas preseason games were, the first technical games of the regular season.
Right. All right, so as far as matchups, you got Penn State, Michigan this weekend. So number 10 and number 5. Alabama, Tennessee, 3 and 6. Georgia plays a nobody. That's number 1. Who's number 2 going into this? Ohio State? No. Ole Miss.
Alabama? No.
Clemson's 4. Whoever's number 2 is off this weekend. What the hell? That's the wrong button. Georgia's 1. Alabama's 3.
Let's guess Ohio State then.
I don't see Ohio State. I think they're off this week. Yeah, it looks like Ohio State's off this week. So they're not playing anybody good. So where else would you go this week? That's my question.
Gerald J. Ford Stadium.
Where's that Big Tate at? I want to see. This Michigan kerfluffle you're talking about. No, see, there you go. Play Michigan on 11/26. We'll be in the woods.
The last game. Okay.
No, that's the day after. Is that Thanksgiving Day? What day is Thanksgiving on? No, it's
Day
the
before
Saturday after.
Thanksgiving.
Saturday after Thanksgiving.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, Columbus Day, everybody. We just celebrated Columbus Day
Indigenous Peoples Day.
and Indigenous Peoples Day. I think it's fair to stack those holidays. Okay, another controversial opinion from me. I find the disdain for Columbus Day a little bit odd. I'm not saying he's a good dude. I'm not saying he did good things. I'm not even going to... I'll even agree that he didn't discover America, obviously. At least, even for white people, he didn't discover America. The Vikings were here first.
But
I think it's an important historical event. Like, I think it's a significantly important historical event, enough that it should celebrate a holiday.
that he sailed across the Atlantic?
Mm-hmm. And he was the first. I mean, he was the first of the era of Europeans.
No.
Who was before him?
Vikings made it to Canada.
Right. I said white people, but Vikings weren't really European. They're Nordic. They have a separate subset. They're European now.
They're not part of Europe.
As far as like,
I mean, they're just like right across a small little sea from Great Britain that's considered part of Europe.
but they didn't. It didn't turn into suddenly. I don't know. Like, the world doesn't exist as we know without Columbus. Yes, somebody eventually would have got there, but the world doesn't exist. Period. World War II doesn't happen the way it happened. No, like so much. Like
that's hard to speculate.
It's not.
You had Magellan and Vasco da Gama that were traversing the Earth as well.
Okay, but all right, but they were the first two. The first of the 14th, 15th century era explorers to hit this land was Columbus, and that started the whole deeper exploration of the Western Hemisphere, confirmation of the round Earth, and all the other cool stuff.
I'm not sure who first sent actual settlers to our mainlands.
Right, and again, I'm not going to try to downplay the accidental terribleness of bringing the plague and all sorts of other nasty diseases over here and killing millions of people accidentally, or I'm not going to pretend like he didn't kill a ton of people on purpose and enslave a bunch of people and do all sorts of other terrible shit. I'm not saying that none of that happened, but the world as we know it, I think hinges strongly, and maybe this is my Americana at play, is like hinges very strongly on the growth and empire that America has become, and that doesn't start without the discovery of the West in that process. Again, it's not a pretty history. No history is pretty anyway, but I do think that it is a significantly important historical event and person for being the first to push over that change. And again, I'm not going to deny there's a ton of terrible shit. I'm not trying to downplay a ton of terrible shit. But I think it was a massively impactful historic event that he accidentally discovered the Americas. I think it's massively important to the history of humanity, both good and bad. It's very bad for Africans. Well, a good number of Africans, not all of them. It was very bad for Native Americans. It was very bad for the Aztecs were the only one that were still kind of left anyway, right? The Maya and the Incas were already gone.
At that point, I'm not really sure.
I can't remember but there was a little bit of them left. I mean, there's theory, and this is kind of neat because
the Incas were still around because the Spanish hadn't gone to South America yet.
I think it's the South America. No, it's. I think it's maybe it's the. Fuck, I get this always mixed up every single time. Who's in Mexico? Mexico City was Aztec, right?
I think Aztec and Mayans. You get into them a little bit more in Central America.
Okay, maybe it's either Aztec, maybe it's Mayans in Yucatan area or something like that.
I think so.
That they've discovered the jungle has taken so much stuff back, takes it so back so quickly that there's at least a theory out there that, and again I might be mixing up all sorts of details here, but the theory basically is that Columbus and or some other explorers had gotten down in there and accidentally spread smallpox or whatever. And that, like, one of the ideas is that, what's the city of gold?
Timbuktu.
No.
Oh, El Dorado.
El Dorado. That El Dorado is real, or was real, and an explorer went and saw it, accidentally got everybody sick, went back to wherever to bring more people to help him probably conquer and kill all these people because he was an asshole or whatever. But in the time it took him to get back and, you know, pitch to the king or whoever to help him fund his next journey, it took a couple years or whatever, that whatever the smallpox or whatever killed off the entire population, and the jungle grew back and swallowed up the temples and stuff.
They're still finding some of them.
Yeah, like with this new LiDAR or whatever.
Yeah.
This like this, you know, space lasers.
Right.
Legitimate space lasers. Maybe Jewish. I don't know. Got to make the joke if it's there, people. I'm sorry.
MTG.
Yeah, but you know, they're like, there's the theory is that maybe he wasn't wrong about the city of gold existing. Maybe it wasn't real gold, or maybe it was shiny, whatever.
It had anything to do with Columbus, though.
No,
Okay.
I don't think it was Columbus, but it was in that era where, like, they're first exploring, first wandering in, and like charting maps and trying to figure all this shit out, and then continuing their thing, and then go back and be like, hey, I found this city here, and they got gold and gold and gold. And by the time he collected another party and came back,
Yeah, but I don't think we've ever found large deposits of gold.
no,
I mean, we know there's like gold throughout the U.S. and South America.
right? But I think the idea is that he was mistaken on how big it was, or maybe he saw a small building that was covered with gold. There was a temple, and knew that there was other stuff there, and just assumed it was all as awesome as the one or whatever. Like, there's all sorts of conflation on this person's part.
Yeah.
But my point is by the time it took him to finish his exploration, get back, get a party together, smallpox or whatever killed the population that he was visiting, and the jungle swallowed up all the stuff. And so when he came back, he couldn't find it.
It's possible.
That's the interesting little theory thing that I heard about. I wanted to share.
It's very possible.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. I mean, the jungle's
Either
pretty
that, or they
pervasive.
knew that they were probably coming back, so everyone just got out of town.
Yeah, million. But I mean, there's like, they found archaeological evidence of.
Motherfucker knows where we're at. Let's go.
But they found archaeological evidence of, like, whole cities dying of smallpox or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think it's not I don't think they have evidence that it came from, but it's a very strong theory that whatever the disease was that killed him came from Europeans.
Right.
Because we're filthy.
Oh, we just had diseases like even just common colds that were not
Right. We built up
native to that
generations
area.
of right.
Right.
We built up generations of tolerance to, and they never experienced it, and everybody was like, "What?" And I think, like, and I know it's a Neil deGrasse Tyson quote, and I can't remember what it's from, but as far as how did he put it? As far as in terms of evolution, Columbus's discovery of the Americas was massively impactful in terms of evolution, not just because of all the death, but because you have two separate branches of the human species that have been split for millennia that are now reconnected. Because, I mean, how long were the natives in the Americas alone? And, I mean, how different...
Tens of thousands of years.
Right, and how different... I mean, even inside the Americas, how different were, like, the, Cherokee... like the Cherokee Indian tribes and those people, and, like, physically different from the Mayans or the Incans. Like, there was significant, evolutionary changes to those body types over the millennia because, like, what is it, who said the Incans had bigger noses because of the altitude or whatever? Like, that's why, like, all their art has really big noses, because they had larger noses as people because they were at altitude more often or something like that. I can't remember the exacts of it, but it was like...
I know Tibetans for years have had a genetic...
mutation?
Yeah, mutation. I was trying to think of a genetic bonus, basically, of being more acclimated to oxygen absorption, basically, at lower oxygen levels, with them being up in the Himalayas.
Right. Right, they don't suffer from it as hard because their lungs are larger, capillaries.
Like some of the
something.
Sherpas that climb up to Mount Everest, the highest point on Earth, go up there without oxygen assistance.
Yeah. Right, because their lungs are better at pulling every droplet of oxygen out of there.
Yeah.
What if they get high when they get down to sea level?
I'm sure.
That's kind of funny. Go down and get high. Yeah. Yeah, see, I told you that when the jokes come, I got to get them out. But anyway, I think I think it's fair to criticize the elementary school history of who Columbus was when we were taught it as kids, because it was very.
I think it's what some people push back more on is just kind of like the glorification of it.
Right. I think it was very like, oh, he was a great dude and he was an Italian, but he got the Spanish to fund his
Portuguese. Portugal.
Spain. I think it was Spain. Pretty sure. But he got the king and queen of Spain to fund his exploration because he wanted to see the world. Not true. He wanted to go out and exploit Asians and accidentally found Americans.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like to find a new spice route, essentially, to the India. So I guess Marco Polo had already gone over there and was like, man, they got some good shit over there.
Have you seen that show?
No, I heard it was really good.
Really good.
Is it still on?
No, it's not running. It only has like two.
Okay,
it only has two seasons. It's very frustrating because it definitely got canceled before they had any inkling that they weren't going to complete it, and so it was like that season finale was kick ass. Can't wait for next season, and that one aired like 6 years ago.
Yeah, I thought it was like 5 or 10 years old now.
Guessing it's not coming back.
Heard it was good.
Yeah, it was very good, very enjoyable, very fun. Good actors, good acting.
Saw some of the Borgias.
Apparently,
it was pretty good.
Apparently, according to the missus, and her knowledge of it is pretty accurate. Like there was like Kublai Khan was a weird dude. Apparently, like Europeans would wander in, he'd just kill them. Then every once in a while, he'd just take them in and kind of make them slaves.
I don't know you.
And then every once in a while, he'd just turn them into like trading partners. Like he just had like a really like inconsistent whatever. And Marco Polo was just lucky enough that he met Kublai Khan on a day that he felt like having a slave friend. And
before I kill you, let's talk for a moment.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like, okay, well, maybe you're all right. Maybe I won't kill you just yet.
Yep. It ended up being like it was. Yeah, it's an interesting, very interesting, fun show. And like I said, apparently
that's where like the Italians got a lot of like pasta. And
that is, I've heard that theory as well.
It's like actually you got it from China, like pizza and stuff.
Yeah, I think just flour in general was a rice flour.
Like a rice flour.
Like the idea of making a grain into a rice or into a flour, I think is a Chinese invention. I mean, most of the cool stuff is fireworks.
Well, the Middle East did it with wheat and other things.
Yeah, I guess bread was in Egypt stuff too. I don't know why. I don't know that one. That would be a good question.
I don't think they had as much rice.
I'm just saying, but turning a grain into a flour, whatever the grain is, I think I just made something up and I was wrong. My wife would know the answer to these things. I don't.
It's possible.
She kicks ass on the Jeopardy. Trying to think of anything else recent, exciting, local. We're on fall break with the kids.
So there was like some fires recently.
There's a fire in like downtown Gatlinburg or something like that.
Yeah, I did see that. Looked like it was like part of like the main like kind of Gatlinburg Mall or whatever.
A couple dudes died four-wheeling. That was a story that popped up on my news feed. Oh, I've been trying to pick a fight with Elaine Davis. Not really Elaine Davis, a PAC that's supporting Elaine Davis. Well, I mean, it's like she's got this.
Oh, shit.
What?
Daisy Dukes has already had the police called out there.
Where is Daisy Dukes?
That's what it used to be.
The replacement for.
Yeah. Early Sunday morning for shooting.
Nice.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's a perfect story. No, I was just saying that there's a PAC that's spending a bunch of money on Facebook, and apparently I hit their criteria, which doesn't surprise me. That's supporting Elaine Davis, and it's like, okay, cool, whatever. But like, it's this flyer here. Oh, this isn't the right one, but this is the group. Which is weird because they have no posts. They only have paid posts, so I can't go find
45 followers.
Yeah. So it's this. It's it's the House Republican Caucus. So basically, it's a PAC run by to support the idea of keeping the House a Republican majority.
Yeah.
I mean, McConnell runs one for the federal Senate. I don't think Pelosi runs the one for the Democrats in the House, but there's federal versions of it, the same thing. And so like top Democrats run these different whatevers. But so one of the flyers, it's this picture of her like this, and it's like, you know, this one, like this is one of her things is that, you know, if you're convicted of a crime in the state of Tennessee, you're gonna serve 100% of your sentence. Like that's one.
I didn't like that bill when they passed it.
But that's one that she's running on. She's going to say that violent criminals are going to spend 100% of their sentence. But another one's like, you know, God, well, it's continue. It's like the wording is. I got to find it. Give me have a second to find it because it's very worded in a way that makes it quite bullshittery. Here it is. It says, protect our Tennessee economy, make our schools the best in the nation. And so I asked, how has or how will Elaine Davis make our schools the best in the nation? And, I mean, I say it now a little bit snarky or whatever, but it's a real question. Like, I really would like to know the answer to that question because we're 46th or something like that in national average, or national rankings by state. How are she? What? Like, I mean, that's a huge best in the nation. That's a big goal.
Right.
And I would like to
do better. Like, we're going to be number one.
I would like to learn more about how. Well, one, I'd like to see what her version of reality is, or where the schools are now, and whether she agrees with the national ranking system that's in place or whatever that says we're at 46th or 47th in the nation in most quantifiable whatevers, and you know, so. You know, I would assume she doesn't think we're number one right now. She might. But still, if she thinks we're number one right now, she's crazy. If she disagrees with the 46, 47, that's fine. But if she says, oh, I think we're in the 30s or something like that, okay, that's reasonable. That seems like it's not completely, you know, it's not a loony guess at where we're at. But how are you going to get us from the 30s to the teens or the single digits? What's the plan here?
Is it just our county schools? Just your district schools?
Right. Is this statewide? Is this Knox County? Like, yeah.
Who is your hour?
And I mean, hell, Knox County right now is sucking. Like, we had some state rankings came out this last little bit, and Knox County, it's like a 5-point scale from like excellent to satisfactory to needs work.
Yeah, I don't think they gave any individual schools. I think they said there was a number of schools in our district that were at or below that standard.
Well, but as a district, we were at the needs work section,
right,
or something like that. Which is, you know, not good.
Room for improvement.
But I mean, that's based off of standardized test scores and stuff like that. And you can argue whether that's a valid, you know, metric or not. But at least with the metric we have, Knox County schools are sucking in a state that sucks in general. But so anyway, point is Elaine Davis is going to make our schools the best in the nation. Tell me more. I want to know more about that particular thing. Because she's running against a professor from UT who I might just generally think might do better at understanding what would be best for our education system than a career wannabe politician.
Why do you say that?
I don't know. I just think, you know, being an educator might give you a little bit of a leg up against a career failed politician who is Elaine Davis. And again, I'm not.
Has she held an office?
No, but she's ran like 7 times.
Oh, okay.
And apparently, the first time she ran for office was like a city race as a Democrat, even though they're nonpartisan. Or some shit like that. I don't remember. A bunch of people are making a big stink about how she'll say whatever she has to win.
Flip-flopping.
Right. But I mean, she's the secretary or something like that for the
She made sure she showed
county party.
Her crucifix necklace.
Yeah. Keep our neighborhood safe, which that goes to keeping people in jail as long as possible. But that's her little, and again, let me correct myself. That's not her flyer. That's the flyer created for her by the Tennessee Defend Tennessee Values PAC. Well, I'm sorry, Defend Tennessee Values Facebook page, who is paid for and operated by the House Republican Caucus. So, you know, which is why I'd like to have Elaine Davis on the show, because I would like to show that flyer to her and say, do you agree with these, that these are your standing points? I understand that you haven't talked to them because you can't. That would be illegal. That would make them part of your campaign. And then the donations get really iffy, and so they can't actually
be part of your campaign. One of those, like, if that was a commercial, she couldn't really do one of those things that was like, I support this message, because that would be bringing them into her fold of
correct
supporters. Okay.
And so if it is a direct, it would then become like a direct campaign contribution. And if any of the donors to this House Republican caucus have exceeded the max, like, because there is no maximum to donate to a PAC. So I could donate $1 million to a PAC, but I can only donate $1,600 per race to whatever. So it'd make it there'd be illegal campaign donation or contributions and shit.
Yeah.
But
Goodies.
Knox County stands with our police, which again doesn't fucking matter. I mean, I guess, well, actually her job title does. Her job title does have control of the sheriff's office.
Not the sheriff.
Right, but the duties...
He only answers to the governor.
The duties of the sheriff's office would come out of the House and Senate and the state. So anyway, I'm fascinated by this, and, you know, I tagged her in one of my comments. Like, I tagged her and Eric Wader in a comment on that thing. It was basically like, I'd love to talk to you, Elaine Davis, about it on my podcast, Almost in Agreement. I've even tried to get Eric Wader to hook up to set us up a meeting, and with, like, each time I said everybody's name, it was a tag, because I'm like, I would like to talk to her. I'm an 18 voter. This is my race. Right. Like, I personally care about this one, but especially even in the broader conversation of it, I think replacing Eddie Manis as the standalone non-party player that he was is going to be significant in House and Senate or House operations. You have a guy that ran as a Republican and won as a Republican, but really wasn't a Republican, at least by the new rules of Republicanism. So he didn't block vote as a Republican like Elaine will. And so there's stuff that Eddie voted against, even though it probably passed anyway, that Elaine wouldn't have, but Kaplan would. So we're going to, I don't know. I think Elaine's winning this race right now, if I were to guess, just because so many people just vote the R. I'm really mad. I wish, going back to this August race, I voted for Kat Pike. She won. Great. But I really wish, blanked out on the name, the incumbent would have run as an independent like she initially planned to. And she's just like, and I talked to her, I ran into her at the grocery store actually. And she's like, I don't want to run as a party, but I don't want to run and lose. So I'm not going to run as an independent.
Right.
And I was like, that's exactly why you should. You should run as an independent, because I think it would be very interesting to me. And I know this is going to be a lot of work for you and people around you, and it's going to cost a lot of money for people and stuff like that for you to do this. But I think it would be very interesting to see how that turned out. Virginia Babb. No, yeah, Virginia Babb, yeah. So it would be really interesting. I would really see an incumbent who was elected nonpartisan continues to run as a nonpartisan agent against two very partisan Virginia Babb or Kat Pike and Will Edwards. I think that would have been very interesting to me to see how lazy voters are, because obviously they're not. Kat Pike doesn't win School Board 4 if District 4 is just not paying attention and just voting. Like, she won because there are people paying attention. Because certain things that Will Edwards says did not resonate well with this community. That's the only reason. So I think Virginia Babb actually probably would have won it, because I think people liked her. And I think it would have been a slap in the face to this partisan bullshittery that they put on the school board. I would have liked to see it. It would have been nice.
We don't need your partisan shit.
But I mean, yeah. I mean, so
we care about the kids.
Registration is closed. Did you update your registration?
No.
Are you going to vote on November 8th?
No.
I don't blame you. I mean, you should, but I don't blame you. Anyway.
I love how we don't have like a background like hisses or hums or anything.
I know.
Nice.
It's that fucking yeah. I gotta go shopping for a lot of shit. Not for here, but I want to buy a few things for here on that expenditure. Get to write that shit off.
Mm-hmm.
But Beer Fest was fun.
Was it?
Wore me out.
I kept wondering how it was going back there.
A lot of people checking out a lot of beers. Zool is expensive.
Yeah.
Like super expensive. Like super expensive. Like,
Yeah, I looked on their tap lists probably like 4 or 5 months ago just to see what kind of beers they had, and I was like, it was all a whole bunch of just like, I really like frou-frou, but there wasn't like any kind of like standard beers. It was very eccentric and exotic sounding beers with different kinds of herbs and spices, and adding in this and that. Some of them sounded all right. Some of them weren't really beers that I would drink normally anyway. They were kind of like sours.
yeah, Ross said there's a pumpkin one, I guess, that we got, and it looks like a pumpkin exploded coming out of the tap. Like it's a little. There's some solids in there, and it's very orange.
It'll be fun to clean out.
Yeah, we're gonna have to pay extra for that tap line. Maybe I should call them. Hey, why don't you come clean up my tap line since you put your orange juice?
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's cool. It's fun.
Everybody seemed to have a good time.
Yeah, good turnout.
Didn't see anybody getting too crazy.
Had a big 420 smoke sesh
Definitely.
at 427.
It went better than last year. There was like a birthday party after last year. So
Yeah.
people got hammered and car crashes. And
Oh, really?
cops called.
Oh, that sucks. Yeah, the weather was great.
Yeah, weather was nice.
God, the weather was great. I was very comfortable. I think I got a little sun because it was like the sun was like slamming me, but it was cool enough that I didn't feel like I was getting cooked.
Right.
So it's just like, yeah, let's pull my hat down so I could see, cover my eyes a little bit. So there's local elections coming up. What else is going on? I feel like I had a couple other things I want to think about. I definitely want to talk about Columbus Day. Ukraine's gotten more complicated.
It's never been uncomplicated.
Yeah. Oh, what was it, Givens? Oh, I shared it to the group. That's right. Tyler shared it too. I don't know if he got it from my page or what, but there is an article from the Washington Post in reference to Mr. Biden's pardoning of all persons in federal prison for simple possession charges. According to the Washington Post, which, I mean, are we
WAPO.
do we trust them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Respected enough.
According to the Washington Post, they did this as like a Q&A. How many people will be released from prison because of this announcement? 0. White House officials, so they knew it, said that no individuals currently in federal prison are in federal prison solely for a simple possession. Okay. So, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an analogy. If I were to walk outside and say, my house is blue, when it's obviously not blue, but my neighbor really likes blue and wanted me to paint my house blue. I don't know. That doesn't work. I'm trying to think of an analogy. I'm failing. They knew there was nothing to it. What was the point of the announcement?
This it expunges a lot of people's records.
Next question on the Wa Post article: will people have their criminal records expunged? No. Pardon only means forgiveness for a crime. It does not mean that someone is considered innocent. Now, theoretically, it signals that maybe this White House is ready to take the Schedule 1 off of marijuana. Maybe. Or this White House realizes that they're in a shit show of this midterm election, and most people won't know any better and think that this is something important and special happening when it's really not. I obviously tend to lean toward the latter. I think this was a political move, pure and simple. Biden gets to go up there and say that. Pot advocacy groups are like, yay, Biden's the best. He's going to move to legalize weed. Biden said it knowing it didn't do anything, but knowing that people will be excited about it and that those people may go out and vote for Democrats in these midterms.
Yeah, see, I thought it would at least take it off to where people could get jobs and actually, click that no, they haven't been convicted of a federal crime.
It doesn't, yeah. At least according to this, it doesn't.
This says it'll, I guess, allow them to vote, sit on a jury.
Cool. Yay.
Or secure employment, but I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, you're not in
Doesn't
jail, so that's one thing that needs to be there for you to have a job. I that bothers me. Okay, I mean, I don't know how else to say it. It feels like a lie. It is a lie. I'm going to pardon nobody. Even though there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, people in jail with simple possession charges,
But
not federally.
Right.
I mean, I can't believe that the White House knew it at least, which doesn't necessarily mean he knew it. But I don't think he just got up to say, I'm going to pardon all the simple possession charges in federal prison today. I don't think it was just it wasn't on a lark. It was something they discussed inside the White House. It was a planned policy move that they knew did nothing, and they did it. How else do you take that? I don't know. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm getting a little bit overly emotional about it.
Doesn't do nothing, but doesn't do as much as I guess you would like it to do.
I mean, again, the only thing it does is signal that maybe there is a future for weed off of Schedule 1 federally.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a small first step into, I guess, getting to that.
I'm sorry, dude.
I don't see how this would kind of start with it, but I mean, maybe you've at least got to soften it on the edge of it. I don't know.
No, he could go and he could. I think the scheduling part is part of the DEA, right? The DEA, FDA.
Probably would be DEA, I would
Okay,
say.
and the DEA is under the president. They're in the executive branch. The president can go in and at least exert influence upon the DEA to change their scheduling of that substance and take it off. He may be able to do it by presidential decree and be like, this is no longer a thing that the DEA considers a Schedule 1, whether the DEA agrees with them or not.
Hey, all he's got to do is think about it. He's the president.
I mean, maybe. I don't know.
If you think about it, it happens.
Man, that story died quick, though. I haven't heard anything about that shit in a while.
There's been a couple stories about it.
I mean, some of the fraud stories, I've heard a little bit more on some of the fraud stories about some of the different PACs and campaign contributions and
He's got a number of cases
whatever's.
that are going through.
I'll tell you what, there's a quote from him at some sort of rally the other day.
Yeah?
I know you don't want to talk about Ukraine, but he nailed it.
He nailed it.
I don't believe that he believes it. I believe that it was in his succession of fishing for what the populist line on Ukraine is, and he found it.
Yeah.
Yeah. He said flirting with nuclear war with Russia is the dumbest thing we could possibly be doing right now. We should be doing everything we can to encourage a peace process and some sort of tenuous, maybe not nobody's happy, but some sort of tenuous peace deal to get this thing to stop yesterday. That's a very, very, very rough paraphrase of it. But basically, he's like, this is not good for anybody to let this continue any longer than it already has. So we should be doing everything we can to stop it.
Such as?
I don't know, not encouraging and assisting Ukraine be a start. Not encouraging Ukraine to fight and assisting them with weapons.
And we should just tell them to roll over. Hey, government wants your shit, or Russia wants your shit. Just let them have it.
I mean, okay.
Yeah,
that's better.
That's how you fix.
That is better than Armageddon. Yes,
yeah,
I agree.
That's how you fix the world.
I agree. It's better than Armageddon.
Just let people have whatever they want.
I mean, Ukraine's not part of NATO. We have no obligation to them. I don't think it's cool. I don't think it's appropriate, but I don't think it's any of our business. I certainly don't think it's $80 billion worth of our business. Made that point repeatedly on the show, and I will continue to make that point because I bet you that $80 billion before this all said and done will get up to $1 trillion somewhere.
It affects the world.
It does. Ask your German friends about how their natural gas prices are looking.
I haven't talked to them in a long time.
Yeah. Well, pretty sure it's not looking so great for them coming into winter right now.
Natural gas or fuel in general has been expensive in Europe for years.
Right, and
they were smart and actually raised their prices to try to discourage it. Like, hey, maybe we should think about how to do other things.
And it's going to be really bad this winter.
It could be. Was it Norway?
They also took like 2 of their nuclear plants offline these last 5 years or something like that. And there's discussion of putting some coal plants back online because they need energy for the winter.
Germany's been pushing, I think, for years to take out some of their nuclear. And they've kind of started to waffle a little bit on it because I think now they've got some new people in government that want to like restart or maybe delay.
I mean, I would want to have it right now if I were them. I don't know, like, what's their reasoning for getting rid of it? Do they suck at it and it's going to melt down like the Fukushima?
No, I think it's just the most common thing is you still got to put that fuel somewhere. I mean,
sure.
Yeah, they've got caves, but they don't have large storage. They're not a giant country.
They got to put that coal ash somewhere too.
Sure.
And then whatever the byproduct is from natural gas, which is less, I agree.
Yeah.
We got to go dig the fucking lithium ion out of the ground in Mexico or Venezuela or wherever the fuck. That's sweet, awesome for the environment.
Yeah.
I think, you know how I feel about nuclear. But I think
it has advantages and disadvantages.
No, I don't think it's okay that Putin decided to invade Ukraine. I agree. I don't think it's appropriate. Legalities,
but he's already done it, so we should
legalities of war, or whatever.
Just let him have what he wants.
Legalities of war, or whatever. It's not our fucking.
That's how we make peace.
It's not our job. Is it our job everywhere all the time? When China invades Taiwan, which they're eventually going to too, is it our job to defend Taiwan?
Are we going everywhere all the time?
I don't know. Are we? We're certainly not going places with real humanitarian issues. I agree with that.
There's many other conflicts that happen that we don't send troops into.
No. So it's only when it's Russia or China that we go because it's expensive. So it's not about the humanitarian.
Where have we gone with China? Where have we gone with Russia?
I mean, Biden has been very clear.
We haven't sent troops anywhere.
Oh, okay. So that's the only way you're actually involved is when you send bodies. So that $80 billion
directly involved in the fighting, yes.
That $80 billion isn't involvement.
To be literal about it, yes.
That $80 billion isn't involvement.
That is involvement in the conflict, okay. Yes.
And so, if you're Putin, you're not saying I'm fighting the Americans or the West in general right now.
So, I mean, subsidies we give to other countries, is that considered like giving them stuff?
Yeah,
because I'm sure
that's what a subsidy is. We're giving shit to other people.
I'm sure we've subsidized things to Russia and other axis of evil, quote unquote, countries.
Cool. So we're
right. Paying them off too.
Sure. We are subsidizing the shit out of the Saudis to kill the Yemenis. Sure. Yeah, we do that. I mean, if we're supposed to defend people and their personal liberties and be the defenders of that around the world, we're on the wrong side of that in the Saudi Yemenis situation.
Are we?
Yeah. Because the Saudis sell us oil for more than, and they short sell and they do all sorts of dirty shit with it, but the Saudis sell us oil, so their principality is more important.
Gotcha. So you're okay with picking a side, just not with a side that you agree with.
Who said I was okay with it? You're the one that said that we are we involved in every conflict around the world? No. Are we on the right side of any of them? I don't know. Maybe that's what I was answering, even though that's not the question you asked. But you're right, we're not. But why are we in this one and not that one? Why is this one our fucking job, but this one isn't? Why aren't we defending the Yemenis against the Saudis? Because it's not politically advantageous. Why aren't we?
I don't know as much about the Yemenis, Saudi. I think the Saudis are going after, I think it's like Al-Shabaab, which is a terrorist organization. They're not fighting the country of Yemen.
Okay. I mean, you're right. I agree. It's one of those fun tribal fights like that are often happening around these Middle Eastern countries.
Sure.
Since that is one of the West issues because we drew these lines, we made these countries the shapes they are, and then we put a bunch of people together that don't get along and be like, "Yeah, you're a country now, figure it out," and then they just start killing each other.
I don't think we had as much involvement in Africa, and a lot of geopolitical, I guess, strategists have kind of faulted us for that because Russia and China have gone into a lot of places in Africa and built up businesses and built up infrastructure. They're kind of being able to be seen as like the good guys, bringing water to drought-stricken areas.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't know. Again,
I mean, it's kind of hard to find that happy medium of being respected within the world, and also America's always wanted to have that kind of a bit of fear with other countries as well.
Let me change the framing on this for a second then. Instead of it being, is it our job or whatever, the more realistic, is it a political or economic advantage for us to have more stability around the world? Stability meaning not war and not bad things happening and not people murdering each other, where instability is war and, revolutions and, consistently changing dictatorships and crazy shit like that. Which one's probably more advantageous for us as a whole?
I think that's an obvious answer. I'm not really sure why you want to phrase it that way, but
I mean, because I think
why would I say that it would be advantageous for there to be discord?
Because somehow U.S. policy has decided that continuing to support Ukraine in a war with Russia is politically advantageous. It's not economically advantageous, obviously, because we don't have $80 billion to send over there, but we're doing it anyway. The rest of Europe, who is, right there, they've sent like $7 billion combined. But it is apparently important to the United States government to make sure that Russia doesn't take any chunk of Ukraine and that we continue to fight this and that there is no negotiated peace, whether it's giving up a little bit of Ukraine in the process or not. That's important to the United States foreign policy.
Yes.
Why? As opposed to, okay, fine, have the Dansk and have the whatever. I'm sorry, Ukraine, I know you didn't want to give up some of your territories, but at least you're not fucking killing each other in the streets.
Because that would have been the end of it, right?
Okay, so then why don't we just invade Russia and take Putin out? If that's the thing, is that Putin is an insatiable beast. He's an insatiable beast. He's gonna, if you give him an inch, he's gonna take a mile. We have to stop him here. Then why aren't we actually over there fighting?
You're going from two totally different extremes here. Let's allow Russia, just take over these lands and if that'll tamp down on the thing.
Is that not the inference that you're putting out?
We need to send troops and an army literally into a foreign land to depose a leader.
I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood, but the inference that I got from your statement was that if we negotiate a settlement, and some of that includes a little bit of Ukraine being now part of Russia or whatever, that's going to be an invitation for Putin to continue to just take things and do what he wants.
That's what happened with Crimea.
Okay. So then we should stop him now. We should stop him now. Not we should help somebody else stop him now. We should stop him now because he is insatiable. There is no stopping him without stopping him.
We can't formally put troops in to fight a battle like that. It's just not that simple. We can't just throw our army into a foreign country and tell our troops
Ukraine would say okay. They wouldn't say they would be upset.
I'm sure Ukraine would probably welcome it.
Okay.
But just like no other country is doing that as well.
Okay. So what's the end game here again?
Because once we physically involve ourselves, we are 100% totally involved in it. And I agree, us giving arms and aid and whatnot to Ukraine involves us in it. But that's a totally different story from us putting our own soldiers into the land and directly fighting with the Russians.
Because what? That's because then it's an all-out full war, and Russia will start dropping nukes all over the world. And
I don't think Russia would drop nukes all over the world now. It would definitely escalate it. Yes.
Okay. Okay. I'm confused then. I don't get it. I don't understand what the goal is here. What is the goal for the United States? To defend the totality of sovereignty of Ukraine,
of a nation. Yes.
Okay, but we don't do that everywhere. That was your assertion.
Give me another example of a country that has annexed land.
I don't know one. You're the one that said that there's other things going on around the world that we don't involve ourselves in.
There's other conflicts that we don't involve ourselves in, yes.
Oh. Okay.
I mean, when shit was going on in Myanmar, we didn't send troops there.
Okay. Why not?
Don't know. I'm not in the State Department.
I don't know, and I'm not either, but I'm trying to understand the thought process here and why this is fucking important.
That was an internal struggle. I'm sure we probably tried to send some advisors to at least try to sit down.
I'm sure we had all sorts of people
try to mediate some things,
all sorts of shit. Probably all sorts of little soldiers running around doing fun games that they do. I just don't. I don't see, like, I agree. It's not cool. It's not okay. it's illegal in the world war rules, whatever the fuck it is. Not that there's any muscle to the standing of, oh, it's an illegal war because he never declared war and whatever. I'm not a Putin apologist on this. I don't think it's appropriate that he's doing any of this stuff. I just don't see the conversation of what is the point of this from our end. I acknowledge that it's not cool, and I acknowledge that it sucks for the people of Ukraine. But at what point, I don't understand why it is worth what we are spending on it. I don't understand that. Like,
a third of the world gets their wheat from Ukraine.
Oh, okay.
We're a part of that.
Okay. Okay. I don't know what to say. I mean, we don't have.
We're an interconnected world,
right? And the majority of Europe gets their gas from Russia,
right?
But we're happily we
so
happily cut Russia off in a second.
Do we cut them off
from selling their gas?
Huh?
Yeah, we cut them off.
Who cut whom off?
The West at large cut Russia off from selling their gas to the West. Rephrase that. I'm sorry. The West refused to buy Russian gas as through sanctions. No?
Yeah.
Huh. I know Germany continued to, despite the sanctions.
We're still getting oil and gas, or the Europeans are still getting oil and gas from Russia.
Oh, that sucks.
I don't envy them in this situation, yeah, because they're basically like, you're a piece of shit, but are we still getting our delivery on Monday?
Right. But how are they paying for it? Russia's not on the SWIFT banking system. Are they driving are they driving buses of cash into Moscow?
I think there's been transfers because they.
I mean, Canada,
something with the the contracts that Russia at one point had tried to say that any gas and oil payments had to be paid in rubles, but apparently the European countries were able to find their contract. It was basically like, no, there's nothing in there that says we have to pay in rubles. As part of our contract, we can pay you in euros. There's a couple different currencies I could pay them in. Okay.
Well, I mean, both Nord Stream 1 and 2 are down.
There's ways to make payments.
So, I suppose so. Maybe not 100% of the gas is cut off. I know India and China have been buying gas from them. But for the most part, the volume of Russian gas going into Europe is cut significantly.
People have done it before and during wartime for many years.
Okay. So, yeah. So I guess that's why Germany's not pitching in as much in arms and stuff to Ukraine, because they need that extra money to buy the gas.
Couldn't say what their logic is fully.
I can't either. Just guessing.
I mean, part of it, you've got a new leader that just came in, I think last year. His first time stepping in. Olaf Scholz, I think maybe is his name.
It was that lady for a while.
Took over from Angela Merkel.
Haven't heard any updates from the king. Has he given a speech or anything?
No, I did read today that his, official coronation won't be till next May. Whatever reason.
We were playing Jeopardy, and the final answer was something about the Bismarck, right?
Right.
Getting sunk. To which I had a thought. I was like, what's the prefix on a German boat? It's USS or HMS. And so I was looking it up, and while I was looking it up, it's Canada and Australia, or it's all HM, Canada's HMCS, Her Majesty's Canadian Ship.
Yeah.
And I was I said that a bunch of times. I was like, I'm sorry, it's His Majesty's. So used to saying it's Her Majesty's. I've said it my whole life, but it's His Majesty's.
Yeah, been doing it for 70 years or whatever.
His Majesty's Australian ship, His Majesty's Canadian ship, His Majesty's ship, if it's actually British Navy.
Did you watch that one video I sent you that talked about? It was a Simon Whistler guy that talked about the different powers of the Queen. I mentioned it once, and I actually sent it to you.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
It's been a little while.
It
was kind of crazy because I guess by law, the king or queen could technically dissolve Parliament and just keep having elections done until they were happy.
Nice.
With the thing they were picked. The people still get to pick, but I guess it's the king or queen that finally gives the final okay.
Right. You're wrong.
Yeah.
Do it again.
I guess they could just be like, yeah, no, sorry, do it again.
You're wrong. Do it again.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's one of those crazy things, yeah, where they have a lot of power, but he made it a point to, and she did it as well, to not ever try to like utilize or try to push the bounds of her powers. Because for the most part, the monarchy's always kind of been in the background. Like they have the power, but
always being always being an overstatement. But yes, I get what you're saying.
Huh?
Always being an overstatement. But
they generally try to stay out of politics, as far as not even, because
in modern history, that's what I'm poking at. In modern history,
I think before she passed, he was going to go to some meeting they had recently of like a UN or G7 meeting or whatever. I guess now King Charles was a pretty environmental advocate, but I guess since he is now king, he is backed out of going and speaking on that.
Right,
it's always been common
as a duty of the. Right. You keep
to
saying always.
Not involve themselves in politics.
You keep saying always, and I'm like, that's...
I said
recent
history. These are like always try.
I'm just saying always in the sense of absolutely not. No. Previous kings were 100% the political leaders of the countries, of the empire, of the British Empire. Yeah. But in modern history, mostly from King George was her dad?
Something like that.
Like King George III was one of the biggest transitions out of and into the parliamentary system, where he let the parliament do its thing, and then she was like, "I'm just here, being hot." See that picture of her when she was in the Army Corps or whatever?
I've seen younger pictures of her.
She's smoking.
Not bad. And apparently there was a story of, I guess she kind of got some flack for it, but it was a little bit more of like Trump, like opening up his mouth. Because I guess it was like during the time of Brexit, and Trump, after having met her, divulged that she had told him that, you know, she wasn't really a fan of Brexit or didn't think the Britain needed to leave. That was kind of one of the things. It's like, when you talk about the Queen, like, you don't talk about to anybody.
Right.
It's like, you know, they very rarely, you know, the monarch very rarely talks about politics in general, let alone like someone else,
at least not
divulging,
publicly, right?
Yeah, divulging what was said in a private conversation.
She's a human being, and she obviously cares about her country. And so, if she's sitting around Buckingham Palace with some people chatting about what's going on in the world, it's not public information. It's just her chatting like a human should be allowed to chat.
Yeah. Trump's like, you know what the Queen told me?
She should have had a podcast. It'd have been killer. She would have had a killer podcast.
I did see some video of that same guy that did that one, that she has, I think she makes her own ketchup. She had her own line of ketchup and like own line of like marmalade or preserves.
Where did the sales go?
I'm assuming to the royal family. I'm not sure. I'm sure it was probably divulged or whatever, or divested.
I don't care. I was just that's the first thing I thought was like,
where's the money go?
She don't need the money.
No. They want for nothing.
I think that's in the paperwork.
I think there was some talk of that whenever Prince Charles took over. I guess they did have to kind of declare of like what money was getting transferred where.
Huh.
Kind of accounting.
The Jimmy Dore show, and I don't know if it was a joke or not, but the Jimmy Dore show had made reference that, and I'm sure it's not an unpopular conversation periodically in England, of just dissolving the entire entity of the monarchy and just, you know, selling off the assets, and like, because on the day-to-day value, what's the point? So, and so the joke on the Jimmy Dore show was like, cause they have a guy that does impressions, and so like the whole thing, like he was, you know, now King Charles calling into the show, and he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this, and blah, 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 blah. And Jimmy Dore's like, well, I heard there's conversation about maybe dissolving the monarchy. Well, maybe I do want to stay alive long enough to be the last king of England. Which is it was just a funny little bit. What are you getting on about there, dog? Nothing? Okay.
There's a handful of countries that still have kings and queens.
Is it like Sweden? They still have like an actual...
I think they do. I think Denmark does. I'm not sure about Holland.
See, the important thing, and this goes back to the Ukraine conversation to me, I don't really care. Like, it's fun to talk about, but on the geopolitical conversation, I really don't care. If the people of that country hate it, they revolt, kill the person, do whatever they want to do, replace it with some sort of system.
Sure, because that doesn't cause
good for them.
Instability.
I mean, sure, it does. It absolutely does. But it's not our fucking job to
for
make it exist or not,
It's all for a good cause.
or tell the people they should or shouldn't live in a governmental system of their choosing. It's not our problem. It's not our deal. If they're actively hostile towards us, then yes, we have a right to defend ourselves. But to go and interject ourselves in everybody else's business is rude, inappropriate.
We involve ourselves in everyone else's business, but like I said, with the interconnectivity of the world, it behooves us.
It behooves us to interject ourselves in everybody else's business.
Not to interject, but to, I guess, at least have a say, and then if we can encourage parties one way or the other that can benefit us. And
right. Like we brought Zelensky to power, and here we are.
I have to go back and look up that story you were talking about.
But like the last 20 years of Ukrainian history that I spieled on? I don't know. I've got a couple different references that I compiled into that spiel, so two of them I fully trust. One of them I could see there's a little bit of wavering in it. So it's possible that some of my points are a little off. But generally speaking, yes. 100%. The Burisma thing, 100%.
Let's see, the FBI came out and said recently they think they've got enough charges against Hunter Biden for... Shit, it was like weapons charges and something else.
Sweet.
But I didn't see what exactly it was.
Maybe he'll get a federal possession charge for his crack habit. That one's not pardoned.
True. But like the article was saying, is most of the convictions were done at state level. So, I mean, like you were saying.
Right. That's what pisses me off about it. That to me, it's my same complaint that I had about the student loan thing. Actually, it's worse than the student loan one because the student loan will help some people a little bit. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't fix the problem, and why anybody's in jail for pot in the first place doesn't change any of that. It's just to me. It's another buying votes move. That's all it is. It's get people excited. Get people excited about Democrats coming these midterms. I don't know how else to read that because they knew it would do nothing. If they thought.
I don't think that many people would go out and specifically vote just because of that.
It's people that were probably already planning to vote, that this might help them push left or right in their vote decision.
I'm reluctant to have that same thought.
All right. Then why? Well, then what was the point? Like, why would you do it? Like, I'm trying. Like, again, I'm failing at an analogy. I should have done some thinking about this before we did it to put an analogy together. But why, as the President of the United States, knowing full well that it doesn't do anything, would you pardon? Would you do a mass pardon where the mass is zero and you know it? Why would you do it? Like, why would you go out and do that public statement to say...
I'm sure it does something versus the...
So the Washington Post is
nothing. I'm not saying they're lying. I didn't read the whole article. I don't think their article said that it does nothing.
It doesn't let anybody... It doesn't pardon anybody.
Right, it doesn't expunge records. It's not letting anyone out of federal prison because, like they said, no one's in there for solely just...
Theoretically, I suppose
possession.
There could be somebody who has a simple possession charge and something else, and it will shorten their total sentence.
Possible.
Which, again, then it goes right back into my student loan forgiveness thing. It doesn't fix the problem. Doesn't really change anything. Like, what's the fucking point? The point is to get people excited about the midterm. Why would you do it right now?
It's helping some people and hurting none. I don't know. Would you rather have a little bit of something or...
I mean, at least on this one, I don't think there's a little bit. I don't think there's a little bit of anything on the pot one. I don't because I don't believe that the Democrats in Washington right now, if they wanted to do a real fundamental change,
I mean, there could have been somebody for the past 20, 30 years has not been able to vote because they have a federal simple possession thing.
But it doesn't expunge the record. They still can't vote.
No, but they've been pardoned for it. I thought it was saying that it would allow you to be on jury duty and get your voting rights back.
I mean, you can get your voting rights back anyway. You just have to go through the process. Like, I don't know that necessarily...
I think there's some felonies that have like a time restraint. It's like, all right, you've got convicted of this felony for the next 10 years, you can't vote or something like that. I don't know.
Washington Post.
You don't need to read the whole thing.
I want some answers, and you're not helping me.
Well, maybe you should have read this before if you wanted to bring this shit up.
Maybe you should have read it before.
You're the one that's getting your panties in a wad over it.
I am. Because I think it's 100% politics only. What is simple possession?
Nothing
How many
I've really
people...
thought about very much.
6,500 people nationwide have federal convictions of simple possession of marijuana on their record since 92. The announcement would apply to people convicted before... would also apply to people convicted before, but the government does not have data for that time. But the pardon also applies to residents of Washington who are... Well, all right, there's the one set of people.
That's one thing I was saying.
People that live in D.C. who have local charges, technically are federal charges.
Right, because the whole city's federal. Or federal.
The city does not know how many people that actually is. How many people are priests from citizens? 0. Will people have the record of sons? No. What's the difference between different religion? No, it doesn't say anything remotely about any of that other stuff that we're talking about. I call bullshit. It's the moral of the story. Bullshit. It's bullshittery. It's vote behind. It's bullshit. It's they know we don't know any better. And so
you're admitting that you don't know much about it. At the same time, you're railing against it.
I mean, I know it. I know the number one fact that, according to Washington Post, is that nobody's getting out of jail. So there's no pardon if you're not getting out of jail. That's what a pardon is. Hey, you're getting out of jail for the thing you did. It's not a we're not saying you didn't commit the crime. Nothing else.
No, you can still get pardons for after the fact when you're out of jail or hadn't gone to jail yet.
But it does not take the conviction away. If you were convicted of a crime, you can't get a pardon unless you're convicted. The pardon does not say you didn't commit the crime. The pardon just says a super powerful person that has the ability to pardon you
forgetting your
pardons you. Right. So it doesn't mean you didn't do the crime. Doesn't take it off your record, as we discussed. It doesn't get anybody out of jail, except maybe a handful of people in D.C., which I guess that's a win. But the fact that D.C. exists as an entity in and of itself that people are residents of and that kind of shit's weird to me anyway. So yeah, I have a problem with it because it is. I don't know, like I said, to me it is a vote buying scheme, and people will buy it.
I don't see it, but all right.
Because you're smarter than that, and that's good.
I'm not smarter than that. I see the
because you have a generally positive demeanor when it comes to these kind of things, that you believe that people do things for a purpose when they're in government, that they don't just do it for politics.
No, not really.
Oh, then I don't know why you don't see what I see here. I don't know. I do that a lot, though. Like to me, it feels painfully obvious, and I understand that other people.
I don't think it's that obvious that voters would be persuaded to go and do this when 15% of people go and vote anyway. Like I don't foresee this really affecting voting.
Maybe
to a general.
I would say that there's probably some key demographic my guess, my assertion, with no data, would be that there's some data that shows that there are some key demographics that will respond well to this announcement that will help Democratic candidates in the midterm.
I mean, I think it may push. Maybe after reading this, it may push more people to ask their local party races and party candidates. Like, hey,
okay, so that's good.
Are you guys working towards this?
That's good. Then I think that's good enough right there. So, in Elaine Davis, who is in the state of Tennessee, who is a Republican, who is therefore by definition pretty much obligated to be pro or anti-pot, this becomes a thorn in her campaign. If your guesstimation is correct, which I don't think it's a bad guesstimation of how people react to the statement.
I don't think that many people would actually reach out to get a comment on.
Maybe not,
nor would the politician really make a comment on it.
But if there's a comment on record, like, ooh, she's anti-pot, that's kind of sucky. Like, I don't really think about pot in politics anymore because it's just the way it is. That's just, we're used to the way it is. And my assertion, which I am confident is correct, is that at least in the state of Tennessee, you don't win an election with pot. You're not going to lose an election with pot either, but you're not going to win one on pot
Right.
in Tennessee. And so maybe at the edges, at the fringes, it will poke a few holes in a few Republicans in different states around the nation. Though this will help.
You still think people are going to remember the DA story of her shutting down the place? And that's going to make everybody vote for her?
What are you talking about? The
Exactly.
strip club?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I remember the story about the strip club.
Yeah.
What about it?
Do you still think that that's going to drive
Oh, the timing of it?
DA to get reelected?
I don't know. I don't think people
Like I was saying,
understand that part.
it was so far out that I don't think anybody's going to remember that shit.
I mean, no, the strip club getting shut down was in spring, and the election was late summer. Wasn't super far apart.
I thought she was up for this fall.
No, that was back in August.
No.
I love this show.
I just can't keep up with what. I guess it is all local elections.
That's what I'm trying to do. Countywide elections are in August. City, state, and federal are in November.
She could have been a city.
No, the district attorney is a county office.
I know.
But they cover both city and county arrests. We don't have the city of Knoxville does not have a DA. That is a state position, which is why it's a county office.
Yeah.
Boom! I know shit. And then I talk crazy shit. See, that's my idea, is that I can assert real knowledge on real things that most people don't know. So then when I spout off craziness,
You sound more believable.
I'm more believable. Or not. I don't know. I just again, like I said, I think there's my problem, I guess, is that, and this is why I have a problem with the federal government at large. I think the problem with the federal government to me is that it's all politics all the time, constantly. Nothing else exists except for politics. There's politics behind Ukraine. There's politics behind this pot decision. There's politics behind the student loan thing. It isn't about helping anybody. It isn't about doing anything really positive. It's all politics. It's all power games. It's all it is. Locally, it's a little bit different. I think there's more real people doing real shit locally. I don't believe it out of the federal government at all. It's always, is this going to get me or my team elected? How does this help me and my team in the future? How does it sell more tickets to me and my team's things?
I don't disagree that there are members of Congress and Senate that are wholeheartedly in that mindset.
Well, I think the important way to look at that, it's not just, I agree, I will acknowledge that there are some that aren't. There are some that are not ideologues and they don't strictly front party line kind of shit, but they're not the important ones. And that's the reason they're not the important ones, is because they don't play by the rules. Which then therefore means that politics is all that matters, not substance, not policy. Politics. I mean, look at Liz Cheney. Like, she got destroyed for being a Republican with the audacity to say, maybe Mr. Trump crossed the line here. Maybe this is not how we want our president to act on certain things. Destroyed.
Right.
To the point where
She
Dick
lost
Cheney,
like 40 points.
her dad's out there campaigning for her, and people are calling her a rhino. Dick fucking Cheney.
Right.
My daughter is a true conservative. Dick Cheney says so. It's probably fucking true, but she's a rhino. She's not a rhino. She's a non-Trump Republican, which by new definition of Republican Party is now a rhino, which is fucking crazy. But because your policies don't matter, it's only your politics. And that's the federal government is so painfully corrupt in that sense that I that's all I see. And that's why I get all fucking bent out of shape about this pot thing and all the other stuff I get crazy about. It's because it's not about helping us. It's not about keeping us safe. It's not about any of that shit. It's about power games. But what's their job supposed to be? Not power games. Protecting me and you from foreign invaders and making it easy for me and you to go to Kentucky to go do a bourbon tour in Lexington or Louisville or whatever. That's what they're supposed to be there for. But instead they take 20% of our salary and send it to Ukraine so that they can keep fighting a war with Russia, who may or may not start employing nukes in the process, which then therefore means we or Poland or somebody else will drop nukes and then the fucking world ends.
Right. let's focus on that expenditure, because that's the only thing that's eating into my pockets. Not all the other money they take for frivolous things.
Okay, let's go down the rabbit hole. I'll play that game all day. Yes, all of it. Because in my opinion, all of it. All of it. Unless it serves those two purposes I just mentioned.
Well, you don't bring up anything else. You keep focusing.
Because it's the modern. That's the modern conversation. You know, I mean, okay, so at least according to Becky Massey, and granted she's a fucking Republican, so that doesn't mean she's telling the truth about it, but according to Becky Massey at least, the infrastructure bill that everybody's so fucking excited about does dick nothing for us in the state of Tennessee. The millions and millions and millions of dollars, or whatever the fuck it is, that's going to be allocated to the state of Tennessee from this process would have been here anyway. It's nickels, dimes. Difference. Is it a little bit more? Sure. But it is substantially like we should get excited about it more? No. At least according to Becky Massey. And I have no reason not to trust her on it, but she's going to be the fucking chair of the Transportation Committee. But that was sold as a big fucking deal. I was told that was huge. That was a huge accomplishment by the Biden White House to get this infrastructure deal passed. But when it goes through the system, again, according to Becky Massey, at the end of the fucking day, that was federal money that would have come to the state of Tennessee anyway to do infrastructure work. The only bonus in it, according to Becky Massey, is that we now have 5 years to plan instead of just for next year, which is the normal way they do it. Normally, it's every year they allocate a certain amount of funds.
I wonder if one of those weird things that we didn't get as much because we didn't ask for it. Because I know there was part of like the COVID funds that I think a lot of states were reluctant to receive for fear they would then get obligated to.
Right, some other thing somewhere down the road or whatever. Right,
so you took money, so you have to sign on to doing this.
You know, which is one of the things that the Democrats locally like to hammer, and I don't know the truth of it. That's one of the things that every single fucking Democrat locally runs on for state house or state senate is accepting this federal Medicare expansion or whatever. Like that, we have the option as the state of Tennessee to change the Medicare rules, and we can expand it, and we won't have to pay anything for it. It's federal money that
Medicare or Medicaid.
I don't fucking remember. I don't remember. And every Democrat says how stupid it is that the Republicans won't take it. I keep forgetting to ask when I have a Republican in here. It's like, why aren't we taking this money? My assumption is there's some strings attached that this state doesn't want to deal with. But nobody's talking about that part because the Republicans don't apparently care to explain it. I don't know. But again, it's politics for politics' sake. But why? I mean, again, but why am I sending money to D.C. to get skimmed off of and then get sent back? Why don't we just keep it here? Why don't we let the state take the majority of the money? Why don't we have like the states have an obligation to pay into the federal government? The federal government makes their money from the state coffers, and the state does it. There is no federal tax, only state taxes. But each state is obligated a certain sum by citizen or by state GDP or something. For the actual communal United States good. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it drives me crazy. I know this is a fucking old record. This should be on the bigger board, and I don't think it is. But as far as some stupid thing that I like to say a lot on the show, it's like it does not make sense to me that functionally and financially we look to the federal government first, and then financially they take first. Makes no sense to me.
I assume the state pays out before the federal government pay out.
What do you mean?
I guess it depends on who's asking for the money for federal funds.
Yeah, I mean,
assuming it would come from state funds before you're then requesting further from.
I mean, it just depends on jurisdictional fucking bullshittery and whatnot. It's like, you know, if it's Interstate 40, it's interstate, it's federal land or federal road or whatever the fuck. But it's like, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, but TDOT still does that, so I think it still comes out of the state coffer,
right?
Versus,
but again, I mean,
the national coffer.
I mean, I think it's a percentage or something like that. I think federally, I think the federal government is obligated to put in a certain amount of funds for general maintenance and upkeep of their interstate system or whatever. But TDOT does the legwork, and the state kicks in a certain amount of funds too.
Yeah, a lot of people joke, you know, when you go into another state, like all of a sudden you can tell when you're in blah, 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 because all of a sudden the roads change. And you're like, oh, shit, there's some potholes.
Here's the line. Well, I mean, you got it right here in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
You can see where the line is for city and county by where the road ends and the county road begins. But I say again, like I said, I just don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me the way we as people interact with our government. and the way our government interacts with us. It doesn't make sense to me that the most goes to federal. And then states get federal money back and all this. It just seems it seems like a big shell game, and all the shell game does is lose the excess.
I'd say at the same time, it costs that much more for the federal programs to exist and run.
But to what end? And why? I mean, how many states don't have a similar version of? Like we have our
Department of Commerce, but there's also the federal Department of Commerce.
Right. So why does the federal one cost more? Why wouldn't it make more sense to have a federal one that kind of works with all the state ones and isn't its own entity? It's kind of an oversight and communication thing and kind of sits in between.
They do work together. But
I'm just saying, like, what does it?
They also have different goals in mind.
Like
the federal Commerce Department isn't solely focused on Tennessee. They're solely focused on the commerce of the United States.
Sure. And so what it should be doing is making the Kentucky and Tennessee Commerce departments work together to settle issues that Kentucky and Tennessee are having with commerce between each other. Because more commerce for both is more for everybody, including the federal one.
True.
I don't like. It's a stupid question I asked 1,000 times. What does the federal government do for me? And I don't mean me. I mean me, royal me. What does the federal government do for you? What are things that are happening right now in D.C. that are making huge, impactful differences that are important to you in your life?
Keeping my food safe, keeping my medicine safe, keeping my water safe.
Keeping it safe, or punishing
safer.
Punishing people who fail to do so.
Both.
So how is releasing untested vaccines on the market keeping you safe?
Were they untested?
This last one was.
No, they didn't test it.
It did not go through the trial process that it should.
I think there was one, that went through, rat tests.
Okay. No human testing.
Okay.
That's like part of the protocol. Like, if we're going to release a vaccine to market, it has to go through this protocol, and that includes a period of human testing.
Okay.
So we're just not doing that anymore.
All right. Again, you're citing one booster vaccine.
Okay.
Okay.
Keeping you safe.
So all of them, all the vaccines that are out now are not tested.
No,
or you're specifically referencing.
I'm picking one. I'm picking one that is a modern topic that is.
Okay.
So they don't follow their rules when they don't feel like it. Like how is that keeping you safe? They're skipping steps.
So they
periodically.
They didn't do testing at all.
Not according to their own protocol. Correct.
They did do testing. It was approved.
They did not follow the protocol that they set forth for themselves before releasing the drug to market.
You know the protocol to be what?
I know that it includes at least some period of human testing.
As a requirement.
Yes. Unless we're still under emergency use authorization. Are we still under emergency use authorization?
I don't know.
I mean, that might be the catch here for functional following the bureaucracy all the way down to the letter. But I believe that,
I'm sure it was passed. They may have had some little caveat in there.
I mean, I do remember hearing a story about like Pfizer or whoever asking for exemption to human testing for said vaccine variant, whatever.
It wouldn't surprise me if that was during a time when they were trying to roll them out as quickly as possible.
No, this was like over the summer. It was recent.
Yeah, I don't know.
It wasn't like on the front end of it when we didn't know what the fuck we were doing.
Right.
Like this is now-ish. Like Again, you're right. I picked one very specific example of what isn't even necessarily a failure because they're just not following their normal standards. But it could be fine. It could be nothing in the keeping you safe department for them skipping this one time.
It's possible.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. It could be nothing. I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
Right.
Obviously. But I don't know. I just find it interesting.
I mean, I'm sure they did monitored testing. As far as how much, don't know.
I don't know either because I couldn't read one of those fucking things if I Like, I don't know how to read them, even if I had one. I don't know how much the EPA.
I mean, I'm glad that the USDA has put a limit on how many bug carcasses are in my jar of peanut butter.
I mean, I do find the USDA one specifically interesting because they're the ones that get to set the rules on what is or is not considered American beef. You follow this at all? Technically, by USDA standards, I have to double check exactly the timeline, but I believe
we splitting it is like 51% American beef. We're like mixing.
I believe
with like 49%.
That you could take a cow from China, kill it in China, freeze it. I'm sorry, kill it in China, quarter it, freeze it, ship it to the United States, and actually butcher it here, and it would be considered U.S. beef by USDA standards.
Even if it wasn't butchered here. So
no, that the butchering
even
is
do
here.
like the assembled in
right,
USA,
the butcher, no,
quote unquote,
the butchering would be here in the sense that it would go from a quarter or a half cow
to ground or whatever.
To ground and, ribeyes and all the different cuts and ribs and, all the different cuts were done here.
Yeah.
But it's a Chinese cow, but it's considered U.S. beef by USDA standards. Like, what's the point of that?
Don't know. I don't know if that was, kind of like food lobbying, basically, where these food processors are basically saying, like, hey, you guys want meat on the market?
Cheap.
Right. Do you want it cheap? We've got to buy cheaper cuts of meat or whatever, or we've got to process it this way.
And that's fine. I mean, I have no issues with them buying cheaper meat and selling cheaper meat, but I don't feel like that's truth in labeling. If the USDA is going to set the standard,
I've ever bought a steak that said made in the USA. I'm like, all right,
seriously?
It says it's bison. I'm sure it's from somewhere.
Oh Jesus, man! I see it. You see it all the time. You go to
I don't buy a whole lot of steaks.
I'm saying you go to the grocery store and you look at the steaks and stuff. It's like U.S. beef, American beef. You go to a restaurant or whatever, their ribeye and their little description. It's like, 12-ounce ribeye, cooked to your liking. From U.S. cows or whatever like that. They always everybody puts that fucking shit in there. It is well labeled.
I don't eat out enough, so
I don't eat out that much either. But again, my point is it's well labeled. Generally speaking, it is. I believe it's actually a USDA requirement that that it has to be that
so where the beef came or where the meat came from.
Right, the label has to include that. But again, it's not an issue of cheap or not cheap meat. It's an issue of you're correct, 100%. Smithy Field or one of the big cut houses or whatever is we don't sell as well when we say Chinese beef or Argentinian beef. We only sell well when it's USA beef. But it's so much cheaper for us to do this over there. Where, Chinese don't give a shit if the cows just fucking shit everywhere and it goes straight into the Yellow Sea or Yellow River. Chinese don't have any regulations on that. We don't have to put all this extra effort in. It's so much cheaper for us to do it that way. So who's that benefiting again?
Depends on how you want to look at it.
I mean, you're right. Fair enough. Smithy Field is a U.S. company, and that's all that matters.
In their pocket. So, they're still getting beef.
But they could still benefit. I mean, they wouldn't change the benefit of the pocket. Like, if I want to buy a $10 steak that's a Chinese steak instead of a $15 steak that's a U.S. steak, I can still buy the cheaper steak. I'm being lied to about where the steak came from so that Smithy Field or whoever can make their fucking money. I agree with you in that it's nice to have more affordable beef on market, but it's the same beef. It could be honest about what it is, and it's still a cheaper steak.
I'm confused what you're mad about on this aspect.
I'm trying to figure out, you're trying to tell me all these different departments that do great things, and the USDA is one you brought up, and so I start picking apart something that I do know that is a problem with the USDA, which is this particular one, and I'm trying to figure out if the USDA's existence is to help you, because that's where we started this conversation, right? How is the federal government helping you? They built this program from the USDA, or they built this entity that is the USDA to help get good quality food on market for you and your health and safety and so that you can know when you go to the store and buy a steak that the USDA says, hey, this steak's not going to fucking kill you. Right?
Where it comes from doesn't denote if something's lethal or not.
I agree, but what's the point of the USDA other than to have some sort of stamp of approval to you as the consumer that says the U.S. government approves of this meat by some whatever standard the U.S. government the USDA puts together for it.
Right.
They approve that this meat is, if prepared correctly and all things go well, that it should be safe to eat,
right.
And this, that, and the other.
It meets our minimal standards.
Right. But who does it benefit for them to let Smithyfield or whoever the meatpacking house is lie to you about where the steak came from?
Companies.
Okay. So you acknowledge the fact that the USDA is corrupt then?
It may have just been a workaround that was never actually worded to where Smithyfield has to label each.
So you don't think that there is a U.S., maybe a Texas rancher?
I'm just speculating that maybe it's just a workaround of it doesn't say in the rules we have to say where this stuff came from, or a certain percentage has to be from here or there.
Okay, so again, you don't think that there's a rancher in Texas who says, hey, these motherfuckers aren't buying my cattle.
It's capitalism.
It's not capitalism.
That's capitalism.
No, that is fucking corruption. Capitalism and corruption are not the same fucking thing.
That's capitalism.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
Please tell me how. Buying if buying the government is capitalism,
I didn't let you finish.
No, if buying the government is capitalism, then yes. If you believe that part of capitalism is buying governments, then yes, this is capitalism.
I didn't let you finish your.
No,
scenario.
you're right. If corruption
I didn't
and
let
buying
you finish
government,
your scenario.
It drives me fucking nuts. That's not capitalism. Buying government is not capitalism.
You're Texas cattle farmer. I'm sorry, I didn't let you finish your thing.
I would assume strongly that there is a cattle rancher out there that goes to the grocery store and sees this U.S. beef, knowing that it's coming from a pack house that's bringing cows in from China that are slaughtered in China, and says this is U.S. beef. That's bullshit. Because I tried to sell a cow to these people, and they said, no, yours are too expensive. And I know mine are the cheapest with all the ranchers that I know. There's no fucking way this is U.S. beef. And then I bet you he wrote a senator or his congressman or whoever the fuck it was and says, hey, what the fuck's going on here? And somebody figured it out. He worked his way through it. So it's not a question of the USDA not having knowledge that their labeling system that they put out to the market isn't a little bit weird. That, maybe you need to clean up the way this is worded so that people are labeling things properly. The USDA is aware. Which, again, I'm going to lay into that same little spiel that I did when you interrupted me, is that corruption and capitalism are not the same fucking thing. A corruptible government is a problem. I will acknowledge to some level that, yes, capitalism does encourage the desire to corrupt a government, but a government accepting the corruption is a separate fucking problem. And we have a government that accepts corruption. This USDA example being one of them. It's an exception of corruption, and they function within it. And people know it. People from the USDA know it. People from outside the USDA know it. And there's no reason that anybody really wants to fix it. Or it'd be fixed. Fix
I just assumed that you were talking about something else. That the farmer was going to be like, hey, I guess kind of what you said of, I'm trying to sell my cattle for this, but somebody else is selling it for cheaper.
Right. But they're selling it for cheaper on a lie. And that lie is signed off on by the USDA. That is not capitalism.
Send me the story that you're reading this, because it seems like you're just assuming that the USDA is highly complicit in this and is fully aware of this.
I mean, they wrote it.
They wrote what?
They wrote it that to be defined as U.S. beef, it must have this process done in the United States, and that process being the final butchering process.
How old is this rule?
I don't know, man. I need to keep every single article. I'm sorry.
No, just one. I didn't know if you knew that this was something that the USDA has put that rule into effect until recently. It's like you were saying, you're assuming that this farmer probably went and talked to his congressman. So that would lead me to believe that this is a new thing that has been put onto the books, that it wasn't on there before.
My Texas rancher was a completely fabricated story.
Well, I know.
But I'm guessing that would have happened when it was discovered, and I don't know if it was that, but your assumption leads that farmer only thought about it when he read the story about it. I'm saying the farmer was the key to the story. They kicked the story off.
Oh, maybe I need to start
in my
going out and
hypothetical.
looking for beef more often because I've never paid much attention. I didn't know it had to be labeled of like where this beef came from.
And I think the USDA label in and of itself is a problem because the USDA label, like USDA certified.
I think it generally just means that facility has been
right,
quote unquote USDA approved to
right.
be
I get that, but
meat
like
fabrication site.
right, but like its logo in and of itself kind of lends to the idea that this is US.
I think there was like a check mark in it or something.
Right, but the logo and the whole set, like the whole stamp, gets it a feel that it's a U.S. product in the first place. But then I do believe country of origin is obligated on foods, but by USDA definitions.
All right. Well, like I said, could that be where they've got 50.6% of U.S. beef and 49.4%?
Oh yeah, but I mean
Chinese beef. Can they still label that as American?
Yeah, because I mean I think the USDA does.
That was more of like my thought that businesses are going to find ways to kind of toe that line.
Because like grass fed as a definition, like this is grass fed beef,
right?
Well, as on a USDA standard, that's it's like a percentage of total feed for said cow was grass. It doesn't have to be the only thing it ate.
And at some point, we let that motherfucker eat some grass.
Right. Well, one time he was out in the field. And he ate some grass.
He got out of the fence, so he got some grass. So he's now the healthy.
Right.
He's our special cow.
Right. Organic's another one too. Like that's, but I don't think that has an official designation from. I don't know if the FDA or the USDA or whoever has an official.
Yeah, I've heard some weird things
stamp.
about that. There's a few different companies that sound
certified.
totally legitimate,
but they're just
I've heard that a lot with like vitamin supplements and shit. Like I don't think any of those are. Right. FDA approved like whatsoever, but even like the more popular ones will say like, oh, the National Organic Pharmaceutical Corporation approved.
Right.
It sounds really cool and official, but it's not really an accredited like.
I mean, it's accredited amongst people that pay attention to it, but if you're just picking it up, it looks like a cool stamp that means something important.
Right.
I agree. That's problematic. It's kind of gross, and that's free market shit at play.
I mean, you have it.
But it's like JD Power. What the fuck? What is JD Power?
Right.
Like, what is it?
I think it's just like a Consumer Reports type thing.
I mean, it's
just like
I don't know the answer.
Like
I'm truly asking the question. Like, I don't know what JD Power is, other than they put those cool trophy outs and people brag about their JD Power.
I think it's just like an opinion kind of
best of the whatever year.
I could be wrong. I thought I remember seeing something on JD Power. A lot
I
of people wondered that and they're like, "What the fuck is JD Power?"
Yeah, I feel like it's actually like it was a company at some point, and like the boss of the company is like, "This is my favorite toothpaste.
We just make trophies now.
This is my favorite toothpaste." Everybody's like, "Oh, he says it's the favorite toothpaste. I'm gonna sell it." And then people are like, that make toothpaste are like, "Hey, JD,
what's his name? JD Power." Like, sounds pretty good. Like JD Power approved.
Yeah. Hey, JD, what do you think about my toothpaste? Yeah. And all of a sudden, he was like, "Well, you guys gonna pay me to tell people what I think about stuff?"
I'll give you a JD Power award.
Right. So
it's just hell yeah, man.
I mean, it's like an athlete endorsement. That's all it is. Yeah. It's like Peyton Manning likes Mick Ultra. You should too, because he actually does pedal Mick Ultra.
No, does he?
Yeah.
I thought I saw something about
it's the
Michael
athlete's
Jordan
beer.
had came to town like over the weekend. It was something about like a Smokies game.
I mean, he's a White Sox. He's Cubs.
So I don't think it was him playing. I don't know if he just like came to a game. Sadly, I didn't.
He was going down to Dollywood.
Read the article, but
like everybody should.
I was like, wait, what? Michael Jordan's coming to town? What?
I mean, he's a retired dude coming to the Smokies. What's up?
Why?
Why not?
Why would you go to a Smokies game?
Because you like baseball?
Why would you go to a professional game?
Maybe he wasn't here for the game. He just went to a game while he was here. Maybe he was going to Dollywood, like I said.
True. Touche.
And it was like, fuck that. Kids and the grandkids can go to Dollywood and ride roller coasters. Go to a baseball game.
I want to go watch some baseball.
I mean, he's a big baseball fan. That's a known fact.
When I played a short stint, I never knew him to be a baseball fan, but don't know much about the guy.
I mean, I would think. I mean, I guess there's some people that play the game that hate the game, but they know that that's their ticket to wealth. I know there's some guys who've talked about that with football. Like they don't like the game. Like they know the game, they're good at the game, but like other avenues just weren't there. So it was a professional choice. Like it's like, you know, me working my day job. I don't like the job, but it's okay. I mean, I do like the game. We sell beer. I mean, come on. But you do the job. All right. In case you missed it, closing story. I'm trying. I didn't set up a thing. So, all right. So, Sam's, in case you missed it of the week, here we go. Crowd is excited. Sam Alema.
Shit, I don't have one specifically.
We were told you were pulling stuff up in pre-show, ready to go.
Yeah, I pulled up a few things. I thought you would be like, "Oh, that's a good one."
I didn't know that was what you were asking. But honestly, my opinion doesn't matter. It's your opinion of what you think is the most important ridiculous story of the week.
College football at 49, North Dakota lineman has right stuff.
North Dakota State or North Dakota?
Let's see here. Who's he play for? North Dakota State College of Science.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's like Division 7.
He was their backup defensive lineman.
Not even a starter?
Yeah.
How's that a story? That's like Rudy. Apparently, I did hear this on the Rudy conversation. The coach in Rudy,
yeah,
who in the film was like kind of the villain. Like he was the like, fine, you're persistent, I'll let you on the team or whatever, but you're not going to play, you're not going to play, you're not going to play, you just practice, you're going to get beat up in practice, whatever. Apparently the actual coach really liked Rudy, and when they were writing the film, they're like, hey, we need to write you as the bad guy. And he's like, well, I like Rudy a lot, so whatever makes it good for him, I'm good with.
Yeah.
I was like, that is an amazing story. That just made one of the saddest, greatest football films. I don't know. Brian Song's pretty good too in the sad, great football films. But it just made it a little bit better knowing that fact. That the guy you hated in the movie was actually a really good dude and really liked Rudy and really wished for him to be able to play, but he's just like, you're not there. It's not a personal issue or whatever. It's just like, you're not there. And apparently, like the play at the end of the movie, when Rudy goes in, like in the movie, like he's begging, let me in, coach, let me in, coach. The reality, when it actually happened in history, was coach was like, it's time now. Like he actually said, this is the time. I want you to make this play. I want you to get out there on the field.
Do it, Rudy.
Right. Which is like, I'm getting a little tear jerky. I'm a little sad right now. So old man playing football. I mean, I wouldn't, good God. Even like Division 7 football, I couldn't get on the field with a bunch of fucking kids.
Came out in the 90s, Necessary Roughness. Had Scott Bakula. Came back as an older quarterback to help it was like a Texas team.
I vaguely remember that.
Had Sinbad was in it. He came back as, I think he was a teacher, but also like helped out on the team. They brought in like 2 or 3 like older guys onto the team. They had Kathy Ireland that ended up being Scott Bakula's like little girlfriend in it. Oh no, she ended up being the field goal kicker. She was a badass soccer star.
Oh, nice. Mia Hamm was a question on Jeopardy.
Really?
Proud of that one. Like I got that one. Like boom, nailed it.
I saw a story about Hope Solo.
What about her?
It had to do with, I guess, it was a class action lawsuit that the U.S. national team, I guess a mixture of like the men's and women's, had a class action lawsuit as far as the pay disparage. I think she had a lawyer that came out and said that she wasn't going to accept it. I think that had to do with the lawyer looking at to how much of that, like $26 million was supposed to get spread out among all the players.
Right.
Like $12 million of that was going to like lawyer fees. It seemed like that was part of the pushback. I'm not really sure.
And I mean, she was popular enough that she had other income that, as far as the need for money for her, was different from maybe the other people.
She got in trouble last year, or year before. She apparently got like a DUI with having like 1 or 2 of her kids in the car in like North Carolina.
That's rough in Tennessee. You are not allowed to be around your kids for a period of time if you get a DUI with a kid in the car.
Really?
Yep. I had a guy I know, like he had to move out of his house because he couldn't be around his son. He has like 4 kids. But he couldn't be around his son for a period of time for, I don't know exactly what, I think it was the pending period between the arrest and
the decision,
like his court date and all that kind of shit. I don't remember. I haven't talked to him about it. It's like I'd love to pick his brain on it, but it's also like I don't know you well enough to know whether it's okay to breach this conversation or not, and so I'm not going to breach this conversation with you. I'd love to understand it a little more, just because.
I mean,
curious.
DCS takes that stuff pretty hard. I mean, if they see a child that's in danger, sometimes they'll err on the side of caution and been like,
and it's,
hey,
right, and it wasn't like a pullover DUI. It was like he got in an
you're
accident.
endangering this child, like. You are a danger to this child's safety.
He pulled out in front of somebody and got hit, so it was an accident.
Right.
So it wasn't like he drove home or was driving somewhere and got pulled over to whatever. It wasn't like...
It could have still been a fault. I don't know.
Right. The argument could have been made, like it wasn't one of those that the argument could have been made that he wasn't drunk enough to put him in danger or whatever. Like that wasn't it. He got in a wreck. And my understanding of it is like he was turning left and just turned left and there was a car coming and got T-boned. Yeah. And I was like, dude, that sucks. I mean, you did it. You know better. Still sucks.
Right.
But you know better. All right. Last call. Anything I'm missing? Come on. Stupid Packers lost the fucking Giants in fucking London. Fucking jackholes.
Been watching or as much as I can of the Waukesha.
Oh, yeah, man.
Parade.
Why didn't you bring this up earlier? I want to know about this. I want to talk about it.
What you want to know?
Well, I mean, we're at the end of the show. I mean, I'm not going to break up in a 30, 45-minute conversation. We're already 2 hours in.
It's just kind of interesting to watch. Like, just the process of it, which
you've been
tried to encourage you to do. Just like actually, watch a court proceeding just to see like how the proceedings actually go. And I actually found a couple videos of like his earlier, I guess, arraignments. But he's representing himself.
Why do you want me to see like just the process part?
I feel like you've pushed back on it and just like the court process itself, and like I've got the feeling you think that the courts are just kind of corrupt, and I'm like, why don't you actually watch some of these judges and like how they actually do the court proceedings? And
okay, I'm trying to think of why you would think that, but okay.
Yeah,
I don't trust the state, and the courts are part of the state. So yes, there is a general. I don't disagree with that. There's a general mistrust of a state body doing the thing.
I can't remember if you said it specifically, but a lot of people are just like, the courts are just out there to slap on fines and just, trying to.
I mean, I think there's a weird incentive program in place, and I don't think there's a better way to do it, and that's kind of the problem I have with it. I thought
it was. I mean, when they talk about, you talk about these, I guess quote unquote high dollar like court cost. When you look at like a court proceeding and how many people are there, you've got at least 3 or 4 bailiffs. You've got a judge that's making a good bit of money. You've got at least 2 or 3 state prosecutors and all the other auxiliary staff. You've got your court reporter, all these other people. Like what it literally costs to put on, even if it's a short case that may be 2 or 3 days, but an hour or 2 each day. That's still a lot of time that it's costing essentially the state to prosecute a defender.
Yeah, I mean, I
they're just trying to add on all this money. It's like,
You're right.
It costs.
I get it. I get what you're saying.
I couldn't remember if you had done it specifically. I know a lot of people.
I'm certainly in the wheelhouse of said thought process. I don't know if I've been specifically on that one. My issue is is the lead up to. Like we had a big conversation last week, 2 weeks ago about maybe a month ago now when Max was talking about the bail conversation and all that kind of stuff. Like that's where I have a bigger I think that's where my bigger issue is that the idea that a prosecution is taking a case if they don't have everything piled up and ready to go. The idea that it's more than it's I already know the facts. I just need to prove them to the jury. And the manipulation of it, there's some issues there for me in the court process, but I think the investigation process and the way the police and the DA's office interact with some of the stuff I have problems with is that I think there's some perverse incentives in play for the DA to support their police and the police, but they're supposed to be separate entities. They're designed to be separate entities, but they work together so damn much that it becomes it's still my buddy. I mean, it goes back to the hate crime and Georgia or whatever a couple of years ago. That was a big fucking story. The Aubrey case. Yeah. You know, like the guy was a retired cop, and every fucking judge in town knew him and had worked with him. And so it became a really complicated, like, passing the buck thing. But it's like, well, I can't take this case because I've worked with him before.
Right.
The DAs don't want to touch it because they work with this cop, and it's like, well,
I'm sure to an extent some of those people also are like, well, no, there's no way. I've known that guy for 20 years. Like, there's no way he did that or whatever.
right. And so like all that kind of interplay, and there's no way around it. And I acknowledge that this is one of those sticky spots that has to exist, and we've got to do our best to avoid letting those sticky spots overcome and, you know, wrongfully convict people and kind of shit like that. And so, you know, but I remember at the time, one of the things that everybody was complaining about the Aubrey case is, why hasn't he been arrested yet? Why haven't these guys been arrested yet? It's very clear from the video and stuff. And it's like, well, there's some complicated shit going on in the background here. And that's a problem. I don't know the solution to said problem, but that's part of the problem is that,
I think that was when they brought in the GBI, like the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
Right. But I'm just saying that, like, that was one of the problems, and nobody wants to hear that. It's like, come on now, take a breath. If that happened here, and it was Chief Noel, after he retired, he's been working for us for 20 years, and he gets arrested on something, no DA can touch him locally. Not that they can't, but no matter how you slice it, that DA's got a problem. It needs to get out of the way on that case.
Possibly, yeah.
No KPD officer can investigate that realistically. You know, no sheriff can really deal with that realistically unless they're brand ass new. And it's like, well, you don't want a brand ass new on a super high profile case.
Right.
So how do we play this? And so that's going to take some time to figure out. Not that it excuses how long it took, and you know, but the argument at least was that the only reason that these guys got arrested and eventually convicted was because the national outcry.
The video came out about it.
Right. And I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not saying it is or isn't true. I'm just saying
when it caught more national attention, and that's when I guess the burner was turned up under their asses to start doing something.
Right. But again, I don't know that, but that was not part of the conversation ever. Like, it was never like, hey, yes, I see national people that you're very upset about this, and I understand, but we're trying to figure out how to do this ethically, because we don't want somebody in this case as the DA or the judge who's worked with this guy in the past, and this guy was with us. He was part of our team, which in and of itself is a problem that the police and the judge and the DA are whatever considered.
It opens up the door for appeal later on.
Right. And so, but I don't know if that applies to the thing that just kind of popped in mind when we were talking about. So, anyway, that's all I got. Which button do I push? I forgot. Do you do the outro for me?
No, thank you.
Why not, man? You can do it. I believe in you.
No, thank you.
Fine.
You did so well.
Yeah, didn't I push the button twice? Like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm going to do it again. Almost Agreement, everybody. Me and Sam, doing what me and Sam do. Max has been working super hard on things to make me money, so I can't get mad at him for not being here. AC is at a fucking baseball game. He's in Atlanta, playoff baseball for his fucking Braves. It's more important than hanging out with us and talking stupid shit about a pardon of 0 people. Anyways, we're Almost in Agreement, almostagreement@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. You can go to the website, almostagreement.com. You can check out my election guide 22. I've got a few interviews. I'm still trying, but really everybody's kind of giving me the cold shoulder. I need to get Gloria. Gloria will answer when I call her. But I didn't want to get Gloria until I got pause. Because, I don't know, that's who I wanted to talk to first so that I knew I had something. But, anyway, check that out. It's got some links to some different KGIS and whatever, so you can figure out your voting location and what district you're in. And then it's got my discussion with Becky Massey about the 4 election items. Do your homework on those ballot items, because it's going to be a lot of reading on the day of, and it's really confusing language, so do your homework first and then go vote. November 8th, Election Day. Good night, everybody.